kingdom can survive a war and still tremble before a cradle. Tonight, the whole Kuru line hangs on a child who has already passed through fire before his first breath. The drums of victory are silent, the lamps burn low, and in the inner chambers of Hastinapura, everyone is waiting for one small cry that does not come. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're walking through Hastinapura at dusk. The war is over. The dust of Kurukshetra has settled into everything. It clings to carved doorways and bronze lamps. It lies pale on the hems of white mourning cloth. It drifts in the courtyards where no one sweeps too hard, as if even the servants are afraid to stir the memories. The air is warm and heavy. You smell sandalwood ash, sesame oil, old garlands beginning to wilt, and the faint sharpness of medicinal herbs crushed in stone bowls. Somewhere deeper in the palace, ghee lamps flicker. Their flames bend in the slow breath of the corridors. This should be a night of relief. The throne still stands. The banners of the Kurus still hang from the rafters. The Pandavas returned. Against every vow, every snare, every exile, every terrible sunrise on the battlefield, they returned. And yet, the palace does not sound like victory. No conch shells, no festival drums, no bright laughter carrying from the women's halls. Even the anklets seem to ring more softly tonight, as if the metal itself has learned grief. You pass guards with lowered eyes. You pass old nurses whispering prayers into the edges of their veils. You pass Brahmins seated cross-legged beside copper vessels, murmuring mantras that move like river water through the dimness. Their voices rise and fall with the smell of incense, steady, soft, almost enough to calm the heart. Almost, because everyone in this palace knows the same thing. The house of Kuru has been burned down to one last spark. Bhishma has gone to his rest on the far side of battle. Drona has fallen, Karna too. The sons of Draupadi are gone. Abhimanyu, bright as spring lightning, entered the wheel of war and did not return. So many names have already been offered to the wind that the royal genealogists could spend all night reciting them and still greet dawn with dry mouths. Now all those lost names lean toward one chamber, one young widow, one child. You feel it before you reach the inner apartments. That strange stillness, that held breath, it presses against your skin more firmly than the heat. Silk curtains hang in the doorway, thick and cream-colored, edged with gold thread. They do not stir. Inside, lamps burn in niches along the walls, casting a honey glow over polished floors, cool beneath bare feet. The scent changes here. Less dust, more jasmine water, more camphor, more of those bitter herbs the physicians insist upon. And beneath it all, the smell of fear. Not loud fear, royal fear, the kind wrapped in good fabric and proper posture. At the center of it sits Uttara, princess of Matsya, widow of Abhimanyu, daughter-in-law of Arjuna, carrying the last heir of a shattered line. She is very young, too young for such eyes, too young for such silence around her. The women attend her with careful hands. Kunti is there, grave as a temple pillar. Draupadi is there too, her own grief braided tight, one hand resting lightly near Uttara, as though touch alone might persuade fate to soften. Subhadra waits with the stillness of a mother who has already lost her son and cannot bear to lose his child. Her ornaments are simple tonight. No bright festival jewels, just a thin line of gold at the wrist, trembling whenever she moves. You can hear the rustle of cotton, the quiet clink of bangles, a bronze bowl set down on stone. Someone whispers a prayer to Govinda under her breath and then falls silent, as if even prayer must not be too demanding just now. Outside the chamber, Bhima paces. Of course he does. There are men who can stand like mountains in a storm. Bhima is not one of them. He can break chariots, uproot trees, frighten armies, and argue with cooks about the proper amount of ghee in sweet rice. But waiting quietly outside a birthing room, that is not his battlefield. So he paces. The floor almost seems to object. Arjuna stands nearby, and he does not pace at all. That is somehow worse. He is still in the way. A drawn bow is still. His face is shadowed by lamp fire. His hands, which once knew the music of Gandiva, hang empty at his sides. Yudhishthira has come too. He sits with the priests, listening, fingertips resting against his knee, as though Dharma itself might descend if he remains steady enough. Nakula and Sahadeva stand together like twin flames, banked low, saying little, watching everything. 5 brothers, victors of the earth, and tonight they are helpless before one closed door. Ancient kings could command armies, summon tribute, release sacrificial horses across kingdoms. But ask them to manage one labor chamber, and suddenly they become very devout, very silent, and completely useless. It is almost comforting. Hours pass like slow drops of oil. The palace waits. Beyond the walls, Hastinapura lies under a moon veiled with dust. The city has not yet learned how to sleep again. In courtyards and shrines, widows keep lamps burning. In barracks, old soldiers stare at rafters and hear phantom chariot wheels. In the royal kitchens, fires are banked low, and no one speaks above a murmur. The war is over. The grief is not. Then the moment comes, a flurry of movement, a tightening of hands, a quickened murmur from the women inside. The physicians lean in. The nurses lift fresh cloths from steaming water. The lamps tremble. Somewhere, a bell sounds from a nearby shrine, one clear note hanging in the dark. And then, nothing. No cry, no startled gasp of new life, no thin, angry protest from lungs meeting air. Only a silence so complete it seems to spread across the room like cooling ash. You feel it land on every shoulder. Uttara has delivered her child. The child does not move. The women look down. The old nurses know before anyone says a word. Subhadra sways where she sits. Draupadi closes her eyes. Kunti's hand tightens over her beads until her knuckles pale in the lamplight. Outside, the news does not yet need speaking. The silence carries it. Bhima stops pacing. Arjuna lifts his head once, sharply, as though struck by something no arrow ever matched. Yudhishthira's breath leaves him very slowly, and there, in warm cloth, beneath flickering light, lies the last little ember of the Kuru house, born into a palace full of survivors, born after vows, ashes, curses, and 18 days that emptied the earth of heroes. Born still. This is Parikshit, not yet named, not yet welcomed properly, with mantras and honey and whispered blessings in the ear. Just a small, unmoving child on whom rests a kingdom's tomorrow. And into this chamber, into this held breath and lamp smoke and sorrow, another presence will soon arrive. Krishna is coming, the same Krishna who stood between armies, the same Krishna whose counsel steadied trembling hands on the field, the same Krishna whom mothers call upon when all medicine has done what it can and then stepped aside. Tonight, you will remain in these halls. You will hear the whispered prayers. You will feel the hush before a miracle. You will watch one child, born from ruin, draw the first breath of a new age. But a child saved by miracle does not grow up in peace. He opens his eyes into a house full of veterans. Before those eyes ever open, the war is still smoldering. Night lies over the Kuru camp like wet ash. The wind smells of trampled grass, burnt ghee, iron, and old smoke. Lamps gutter low in bronze bowls. Somewhere far off, a horse stamps and snorts in its sleep, then goes still again. You can feel it, even inside the palace chambers. Victory has happened. No one is using the word. Abhimanyu is gone. His name moves through the women's rooms like a draft under a door. No one says it loudly. No one needs to. Uttara sits with both hands over her womb, as if she can guard the child by touch alone. And every older woman who looks at her has the same thought. This one. This is what remains. She is so young, too young for widow's white, too young for the careful faces around her, too young to have already learned how quickly drums go silent. The oil in the lamps smells of sesame and jasmine. Medicinal pastes dry in shallow dishes beside folded cloths. Someone has burned sandalwood to steady the air. Someone else has left a bowl of warm milk untouched for hours. Grief does that. It turns good milk into skin and silence. Uttara does not weep all the time now. That was earlier. Earlier, when the news of Abhimanyu came in, it broke over the palace like monsoon rain on a cracked roof. First disbelief, then the gasp, then hands to foreheads, then women sinking to the floor as if their knees simply refused the world. Uttara had listened with the stunned face of someone hearing a language she knew, but not in this order. Surrounded, cut off, brave to the end, the phrases had landed one by one, and afterward she had done the cruel arithmetic. No husband, one child. If the child lives, if that word sits beside her like an unwelcome nurse. You stand in that chamber with the others and hear the small sounds grief makes after midnight. Silk shifting, a copper cup placed carefully on stone, a whispered prayer to Govinda, another to the unseen gods who guard unborn children, a stifled sob from some maid in the corner trying very hard not to become the next person everyone must comfort. Outside, the war is ending. Inside, the future is a heartbeat hidden under skin. Kunti comes often. She does not come with fuss. She comes with the tired authority of a woman who has already endured too much to waste movement. Her hair is streaked with grey now. Her face has the look of cloth washed many times and never torn. When she sits beside Uttara, the younger woman leans toward her almost without thinking. Kunti lays a hand on her head, sometimes on her shoulder, sometimes very gently on the rounded curve of her belly. She has buried dreams before. She knows the shape of fear. Subhadra comes too, and with her the room changes, because Subhadra is not grieving only as kin. She is grieving as a mother whose son has fallen before her. Abhimanyu was her bright one, her laughing one, the boy who learned weapons as if play had simply grown sharper. Now, every time she looks at Uttara, she sees him twice, once as he was, once as this child may be. Her eyes stay swollen, her hands stay busy. She adjusts cushions that do not need adjusting. She folds shawls already folded. She scolds servants for bringing food, too late or too hot or too cold. Grief loves errands. They keep the heart from cracking in public. And every now and then, she presses her forehead to Uttara's and breathes there quietly, as if sharing air could share strength. Days blur. Then comes that last terrible night. The war has ended, but peace has not arrived. Men who have lost everything do not suddenly become gentle because the sun went down. Ashwatthama, son of Drona, moves through darkness with vengeance, burning where reason used to be. His father has fallen. His side has collapsed. Duryodhana lies broken. Pride, fury, shame, all of it has boiled down into one last act. You do not see him at first. No one in the women's chambers does. They know only that the night feels wrong. The lamps smoke more than usual. The air presses heavy and hot. Even the sleeping attendants turn in uneasy half-dreams. Somewhere a jackal cries. Then another answers. The sound skims the walls and vanishes. Then the news comes. Not walking, running. The Pandava camp has been struck in the dark. Those who slept have not risen. Draupadi's sons are gone. Drishtadyumna is gone. Shikhandi has fallen. The names come in a rush, each one another door shutting. The messenger's face is the color of old flour. He can barely keep hold of the words. No one breathes for several heartbeats. Then the room breaks. Not wildly, more frightening than that. Women clutch pillars. One sits down too suddenly and misses the stool entirely. Another covers her mouth with both hands and makes no sound at all. Uttara's eyes widen, and her fingers lock over her belly so hard her knuckles pale. Because if such a knight can enter a camp guarded by heroes, what can it not reach? The smell of lamp smoke thickens. Someone spills a vial of medicinal oil, and sharp neem rises under sandalwood and sweat. The whole chamber is fear now. You can taste it, bitter as copper on the back of your tongue. Bhima wants Ashwatthama found at once. Of course he does. You can almost hear him before you see him, his steps like a storm, trying to fit through doorways. Arjuna is colder. That is worse. Yudhishthira looks as if another invisible weight has been added to the 1,000 he already carries. Nakula and Sahadeva move swiftly, quietly, like men who have long practice in cleaning up after disaster. Krishna is there with them. And when Krishna enters a room like this, he does not bring cheer. Not at first. He brings steadiness, the kind that makes everyone else realize how badly they were shaking. His dark face is grave. Dust clings to the hem of his yellow cloth. His eyes hold that strange calm that belongs to someone who sees the fire and the road out of it at the same time. Ashwatthama is pursued. Cornered, pressed by rage and ruin, he reaches for the one thing left to him that can still stain the sky. A weapon not meant for ordinary battle. A final, dreadful invocation. In the outer world, men hear the change before they understand it. The air tightens. Birds burst from trees in the dark. Horses rear. The horizon flashes with a pale and terrible light, not like lightning, not like dawn. Something ancient has been called, and even the earth seems to lean away from it. Inside, Uttara feels it. That is how these things move in epics. A weapon flies through the heavens, and a mother feels cold in her bones. She rises halfway, then grips the side of the couch as pain ripples through her lower body. The women gather around her at once. Someone thinks it is labor. Someone says no, not yet. Someone begins praying aloud, and then stops when the prayer catches. Uttara says what every mother would say when danger she cannot name turns toward the one life she can still protect. Save the child, that is all. Not her own comfort, not her own safety. The child. You are close enough to hear the dry edge in her voice. Close enough to smell the panic sweat beneath the rose water on her wrists. Krishna understands immediately. He tells them what has happened. Ashwatthama, unable to defeat the living in fair light, has turned his fury toward the unborn. He has sent the blaze of his weapon seeking the last heir in Uttara's womb. It is a terrible choice. Also, somehow, exactly the choice such a knight would make, because whole dynasties hang by threads thinner than pride ever notices. Krishna moves to Uttara. He does not rush, though everyone else wants to. That calm again, that unbearable calm that says panic will not help, and so it may as well sit down. He places his hand before her, and she clutches it with desperate force. Her eyes plead everything her mouth cannot fit into words. Protect him, Krishna promises. Only that. And for a moment, in that room full of smoke and trembling and women who have already heard too many promises fail, the promise holds. What passes then is no ordinary sight. Better, perhaps, to feel it. The lamps bend inward as if a wind has moved through them without touching the curtains. The air grows hot and then strangely cool. The fine hairs on every arm lift. Uttara gasps once, sharply, then closes her eyes. You feel it too. A pressure, a radiance, a nearness that is not fire and not storm, but carries something of both. Krishna stands very still. His hand remains upon her. His face is intent, almost inward, as though he has stepped through a door no one else in the room can see. Outside, weapon meets will. Fury meets protection. Destiny for once finds someone barring the road. The night passes, but not gently. By dawn, the weapon has been checked. Ashwatthama's rage has spent itself into curse and ruin. The heir they hope remains. Hope is not certainty. And so the palace enters a new kind of waiting. Weeks stretch, then months. Pregnancy after grief is its own long weather. Uttara eats because others beg her to eat. She sleeps in fragments. Some mornings she wakes from dreams of Abhimanyu smiling and cannot bear to open her eyes again. Some afternoons she sits by a lattice window while parakeets chatter in the courtyard neem, and for a few breaths she looks almost like an ordinary young wife awaiting an ordinary child. Then some memory moves through her face, and the ordinary world vanishes. The household arranges itself around her. Soft foods, cooling drinks, priests with mantras, midwives with experienced hands, elder women with opinions about everything, from sesame oil to moonlight to what a mother should hear in her 7th month. If ancient palaces had one inexhaustible resource, it was aunties with instructions. One says she must avoid frightening stories. Another says no, heroic tales strengthen sons. A third says both are wrong, and what she really needs is clarified butter, warmed with herbs no one can identify anymore, because her recipe is famous and also incomprehensible. Even in mourning, people remain people. Bhima, for his part, stalks near the women's quarters like a man pretending he is not worried. He asks too loudly whether anyone has eaten. He bullies cooks into preparing rich broths. He frightens one poor physician by demanding that the child be born strong enough to grip a mace immediately. No one answers this with a straight face, not even Kunti. For one brief moment, tired mouths remember how. Arjuna cannot stay away. He enters quietly, always quieter than Bhima, and that somehow hurts more. His son is gone. His son's son may yet remain. He stands in doorways with hands clasped behind him, as though trying not to reach for things he might lose. Sometimes he brings small gifts that an unborn child cannot possibly use yet. a tiny anklet, a silk wrap, a carved toy chariot no bigger than his palm. No one mentions that he stares at the toy after setting it down. You see him once sit near Uttara in the late afternoon while rain taps the stone ledges outside. The room smells of wet earth drifting in through the screens, mingling with camphor and warm milk. He does not speak much. He tells her a little of Abhimanyu as a boy. Not the battle prince, the child. How he once tried to climb onto Krishna's chariot wheel and nearly tipped himself backward. How he laughed when horses sneezed. How he learned formations quickly and patience not at all. Uttara listens with both hands over her womb. It is almost unbearable. And then, at last, the time comes. The day of birth arrives under a sky pale with winter light. The palace wakes before dawn. Water is heated, cloth is boiled, brass basins gleam. The women's chambers fill with the clean, sharp scent of herbs crushed fresh, with smoke from protective offerings, with the metallic tang of anxiety hidden under ritual. Temple bells sound in the distance. Conch shells answer from some outer court. Inside, there is only labor. Uttara bends under wave after wave. Midwives murmur. One supports her shoulders, another checks the child's coming. Older women chant the names of the divine under their breath. Sweat beads at Uttara's temples and dampens her hairline. Her bangles have been removed. Her throat is bare. She has become pure effort, pure endurance, pure doorway. You are in that room when the hour turns. The air is thick with lamp heat and medicinal steam. Cotton cloths pile in neat stacks, then not so neat. Someone fans her. Someone wipes her brow. Someone keeps saying she's brave, though by now, bravery is far too small a word. Then the child comes and does not cry. Everything stops, not literally. The lamp still burns, the cloth still rustles, a bird still calls once outside the lattice, but the human world in that chamber stops. The midwife lifts the child, too still, too quiet. Her face changes before anyone asks. That is the worst part, not the words, the face. A cold emptiness opens in the room. Subhadra makes a sound like something torn from deep cloth. Kunti closes her eyes, but only for a breath. Uttara, half risen in exhaustion and dread, searches every face and finds no refuge there. The child lies limp, touched by the old weapon still, as though that night's fire had waited patiently for this moment. No cry, no rooting mouth, no reaching hand, just silence. The silence has weight. You can feel it on your skin. Outside the chamber, men are waiting in hallways where kings do not usually wait. Yudhishthira stands with both palms pressed together so tightly the knuckles whiten. Bhima paces and then stops and then paces again, which is almost more alarming than battle. Nakula and Sahadeva speak in low tones to priests who have already begun muttering mantras for protection. Arjuna stands apart, utterly still. When the news reaches them, no one moves at first. War reaches into a birth room long after the battlefield is quiet. Then footsteps, not hurried, certain. Krishna has come. The corridor parts for him without being told. He crosses the threshold of the women's chamber, carrying neither weapon nor royal command, only presence. The smell of tulsi and road dust comes with him, faint beneath the heavier scents of oil and smoke. He looks at Uttara, he looks at the child, and the room gathers itself around that look. Uttara, drained and shaking, begs him with what little strength remains. Not for justice, not for vengeance, not for the punishment of Ashwatthama or the repair of destiny, only for this child, Abhimanyu's child, the last one. Krishna steps close. He takes the still infant in his hands. The baby is small, smaller than the hopes fastened to him. His skin has the waxen hush of a lamp gone out. One tiny fist rests curled against nothing. You look at that hand and think how absurd it is that so much depends on fingers too weak to close. Krishna's face softens, then steadies. He calls upon his truth, his life, his righteousness, the force of all that he has been. He pours promise into breath. He pours protection into touch. The room is silent enough to hear the lamp flame tick. For a moment, nothing changes. Then the child's chest stirs, so slight you almost doubt it. Then again, a tremor, a flutter, the faintest gathering of warmth beneath Krishna's palms. Subhadra leans forward so abruptly, someone catches her arm. Kunti's hand flies to her mouth. Arjuna, from the doorway, has gone pale as winter sunlight. The baby's fingers move, just one at first. Then the whole hand uncurls. Color begins returning, not all at once, but like dawn entering a long-shut room. The lips deepen from ash to rose. The small chest lifts more surely. A breath comes in. Then, finally, the cry. Thin, outraged, alive. It slices through the chamber like the first bird call after a storm. Every woman in the room breaks at once, not into panic, into relief, into tears so sudden they become laughter in the same breath, into hands lifted skyward, into foreheads bowed to the floor, into sobbing so full of gratitude it almost sounds like singing. Even the midwives, those veterans of blood and labor and practical hands, are wiping their faces with the backs of their wrists. You smell salt tears, warm milk, lamp smoke, sandal paste, and that unmistakable sweetness of newborn skin rising into air that had expected only morning. Krishna places the child back beside his mother. Uttara gathers him with trembling arms and stares as if sight itself might fail if she blinks. Her whole body is exhausted, hollowed, shaking, and yet the moment the baby cries against her, something in her settles, not healed, not that, but anchored. The child roots weakly, searching. Alive children are wonderfully demanding. He wants warmth, milk, breath, the world. Kunti bends over him and weeps openly now. Subhadra presses her forehead to his tiny feet. Bhima, when he is finally allowed near enough to see, has to turn his face away and pretend something very interesting is happening with the wall. Yudhishthira exhales a breath he may have been holding since the war began. Nakula smiles through wet eyes. Sahadeva folds his hands and looks down as if memorizing the mercy of the floor. Arjuna comes last. Of course he does. Some griefs move carefully because they know how easily joy can vanish. He kneels. He does not touch the child immediately. He looks first, really looks, at the tiny nose, at the dark damp hair, at the mouth still shaped from crying, at the hand now curling and uncurling with quiet insistence. Abhimanyu's line, still here. Then Arjuna places one finger into that searching fist, and the baby closes around it. That is enough. He bows his head. No one disturbs him. The palace changes after that cry, not all at once. Grief does not pack its bags because a baby breathed. Too many have fallen. Too many chambers remain too quiet. Too many names still hang in the corridors like garlands left to dry. But now another sound exists. A newborn's restless fussing, a sudden hungry wail at odd hours, the soft hushing of women who do not mind being awakened, tiny hiccups, the squeak of cradle ropes. It is astonishing how quickly one infant can reorganize despair. Servants begin smiling again without apologizing for it. Priests find stronger voices for blessings. Cooks send up broths and sweet rice. Even the old palace parrots, those shameless mimics, start trying out the baby's cries and causing confusion no one really needs, but everyone strangely appreciates. And over this, child hangs a wonder. No one can forget it. He was touched by destruction before birth. He lay still in the world and then returned to it. He survived a war before seeing daylight. They name him Parikshit, the tested one, the examined one. The child seemed to search with wide eyes, as though he were looking for the radiant presence that guarded him in the womb. The child upon whom the whole battered house of Kuru now rests, light as a blossom and heavy as a mountain. You can stand in the nursery doorway at dusk and see it plainly. The lamp flames are low and golden. The smell of milk and saffron hangs soft in the room. Uttara, tired beyond words, sleeps propped against cushions while the baby rests against her side. Outside, the long corridors of Hastinapura hold their old sorrows. Inside, one tiny chest rises and falls, and for tonight, that is enough. Years pass, anklets become boots, wooden toys become weapons, and the throne begins to look less like furniture and more like fate. In Hastinapura, mornings return with discipline, conch at dawn, servants in the corridors, the clean splash of water in copper basins, sandalwood smoke curling upward from shrines where names of the departed still hover like breath on cold air. And the child lives. Parikshit grows, where grief has already moved in and unpacked its trunks. Every hall remembers someone. A doorway remembers Abhimanyu laughing. A courtyard remembers Draupadi's sons racing with sticks for swords. A balcony remembers Karna, though no one says that name too loudly at first. Even the polished stone floors seem to hold old footsteps under the shine. You can feel it when you walk there beside him. The palace is grand, yes. Silk banners stir. Peacocks cry from the gardens. The Yamuna wind slips through carved windows, carrying wet earth and flowering neem. But beneath all of it is that other thing. Absence. A whole kingdom arranged carefully around missing people. Parikshit does not know this at first. To a very small boy, a palace is simply a place with too many adults and not enough hiding spots. He toddles through pillared halls with a wooden horse in one hand and a mango slice in the other. He learns the corners where maids keep sweet cakes cooling. He learns which guards will grin and lift him onto their shoulders. He learns that if he runs toward Bhima, he will absolutely be caught, tossed into the air, and return to earth, shrieking with delight, while half the palace loses 10 years of life. Bhima is the worst of them, or the best, depends whom you ask. The mighty Bhima, crusher of elephants, terror of battlefields, eater of astonishing quantities of food, becomes completely unreasonable around one child. He pretends not to. He tries to maintain dignity. He fails almost immediately. He brings Parikshit sweets hidden in his sash. He teaches him to clap in rhythm on the dining table. He carves him toy maces from smooth wood and insists they are perfectly appropriate gifts for a toddler. When the nurses complain that the prince is too wild before bedtime, Bhima looks genuinely puzzled, because obviously the solution to an overexcited child is not less wrestling. Clearly, it is more wrestling. You can hear them before you see them. Bhima's booming laugh, Parikshit's smaller one, bright as a bell, the slap of bare feet on cool marble, the rattle of bracelets as servants rush after them, carrying towels, fruit, and despair. Yudhishthira handles the boy differently. No tossing, no sugar smuggling, no toy weapons until the proper age. He is patient in the careful way of a man who knows how fragile peace can be. He lets Parikshit sit beside him during petitions. At first, the child understands nothing. A farmer complains about boundary stones. Two brothers argue over a well. A widow asks for protection from greedy cousins. Parikshit swings his feet and stares at the gold seal on the royal floor. Then slowly, he begins to listen. Yudhishthira explains things without making a show of explaining them. He tells the boy why a king must hear the quiet voice, not only the loud one. He shows him that justice is often dull before it is glorious. No chariots, no banners, just one old man, one disputed cow, and the patience to hear both sides before speaking. The room smells of ink, oil lamps, and the faint dust shaken loose from scrolls. Outside, pigeons coo in the rafters. Inside, the king speaks softly, and the child leans closer. Sometimes, Parikshit falls asleep halfway through a land dispute, cheek pressed against Yudhishthira's folded shawl. No one dares move him. The court waits, while the king keeps listening with one hand resting lightly on the boy's back. It is difficult to look severe when the future of the dynasty is drooling on your shoulder. Still, Yudhishthira manages better than most. Arjuna is gentler than anyone expected, perhaps because the boy's face changes everything. There are moments when Parikshit turns his head just so, and something of Abhimanyu flashes there. Not exact, not enough to wound outright, but enough. Arjuna sees the line of the brow, the quickness in the eyes, the way the child charges into things first and thinks about them second. And for one breath, the old warrior goes still, as if an arrow has passed near his ear. Then he kneels, he opens his arms, and Parikshit barrels into him. Arjuna teaches him games before he teaches him archery. How to judge distance by tossing flower petals into the wind. How to sit quietly enough for a bird to land nearby. How to string a toy bow without snapping himself in the face. This last lesson has to be repeated more than once. The prince wants everything immediately. He wants a real bow, a real chariot, real armor, real horses. He is a child in a city full of legends. This is terrible for humility. So Arjuna makes him start small. A reed bow, blunt arrows, targets painted on banana trunks in the practice yard. The afternoon heat lies over the stones like warm cloth. You smell trampled grass, horse sweat, and the sweet rot of fallen jackfruit near the garden wall. The bowstring twangs. The arrow dribbles 3 feet and dies heroically in the dust. Parikshit looks offended. Bhima, watching nearby, declares it an excellent shot. Arjuna tells Bhima not to interfere. Bhima says encouragement is not interference. Nakula, passing with impossible elegance, observes that if the target had been extremely close and already asleep, the prince would have prevailed. Even Sahadeva smiles at that. Nakula and Sahadeva become the kind uncles who seem quiet until you notice how much they are doing. Nakula brings order and beauty wherever the child goes. He cannot help it. The prince's little tunics somehow begin fitting better. His hair gets tied properly. His pony grows glossy because Nakula personally checks the stable hands and refuses to let the heir of Hastinapura ride any animal with a neglected mane. He teaches Parikshit how to greet horses without startling them, palm open, voice calm. The boy, who prefers dramatic entrances, must learn that not every creature enjoys being rushed by royalty. Sahadeva gives him the sky, not all at once, little pieces. He takes him to the terrace at dusk and points upward. That star, that cluster, the moon in its changing moods, the hour when certain birds grow silent and the night insects begin their thin silver music. He tells him when to sow, when the rains will turn, how kings must know not only armies and taxes, but seasons. A hungry field can undo a crown faster than any enemy. You stand there with them in the evening breeze. The stone still holds the day's warmth under your feet. Jasmine opens somewhere in the dark. Far below, kitchen fires send up the smell of ghee and roasting grain. The child leans against Sahadeva's knee and tries to remember the names of stars. He gets most of them wrong. Sahadeva does not mind. And then there is Kunti. Kunti does not soften in the loud way Bhima softens. She does not shower Parikshit with laughter or spoil him with dates pressed into his palm. Her love has iron in it, old iron, weathered, not brittle. She has buried too much for foolishness. Yet, when the boy comes to her rooms at twilight, all grave-eyed and restless from lessons, she makes space beside her on the mat. She smells of clean cotton, sacred ash, and the faint smoke of evening offerings. Her hands, once busy with the survival of sons, now move through the prince's hair with slow certainty. From her he hears the oldest stories, not court stories, household stories, how his father as a boy could never sit still, how Abhimanyu chased peacocks in the gardens and returned covered in dust and triumph, how he once tried to command a goat like it was a war elephant, how he learned battle formations early, too early, listening from the edge of grown men's conversations with bright, hungry eyes. Parikshit listens very still when his father's name is spoken. Children know when adults are walking around in emptiness. He has heard Abhimanyu described in many voices, brave, radiant, swift, beloved. Those words pile up around a child like ceremonial cloth around a small idol, heavy, even when made of silk. At first he is proud, then puzzled, then, sometimes, tired. Because how do you compete with a father who never had the chance to disappoint anyone? Abhimanyu remains forever young, forever smiling, forever charging into battle like sunrise itself. He does not grow irritable. He does not scold. He does not age into ordinary habits. He stays golden in memory, while Parikshit must be a real boy who drops cups, sulks during grammar, and once hid a palace tutor's writing stylus in a flower pot because declensions are a punishment invented by enemies. The tutor did not appreciate the joke. Bhima did, very much. The tutors have a difficult time of it, actually. Imagine trying to discipline the only surviving heir of the Kurus, while 5 world-famous warriors and 1 indestructible grandmother hover somewhere nearby. One tutor insists on strict posture during recitation. Parikshit slouches. The tutor taps the floor with a cane. Parikshit straightens for exactly 3 breaths. Then Bhima appears in the doorway with sesame ladders, and all educational authority dissolves instantly. Another tutor tries to teach statecraft using carved counters, taxes, granaries, trade routes, reasonable things. Parikshit builds a fort out of the counters and declares the western provinces under monkey rule. Yudhishthira almost smiles. Almost. A weapons master tells the prince to respect every blade. So the child spends an afternoon bowing solemnly to kitchen knives, embroidery scissors, and a fish slicer large enough to alarm the servants. Arjuna has to explain that reverence is good, but perhaps not in the pantry. You are there in those halls. You hear bronze vessels ring in distant kitchens. You smell old stone after the courtyards are sprinkled with water against the afternoon heat. Parikshit races past frescoed walls, ankle bells from passing maidens chiming, his own laugh echoing under painted ceilings where ancestors stared down in silence. The ancestors are everywhere. That is part of it. He grows under their eyes. Portraits, banners, stories at festivals, songs from old soldiers after too much warm spiced milk. The city does not let its dead go easily. Bhishma on his bed of arrows, Drona beneath the war sky, Karna bright as the sun, the sons of Draupadi, Abhimanyu in the circle of enemies, young and blazing. Names come to the boy like monsoon thunder from a distance. He cannot yet measure them, but he feels their weight. Sometimes he slips into rooms where relics are kept. A broken standard, a bow no child can lift, a coat of mail gone dark with age and oil. The caretakers try to stop him, often too late. He reaches for what remains, runs small fingers across scarred leather, asks who wore this, asks where they went, asks why everyone in this palace looks proud and sad at the same time. No one ever has one neat answer, so they give him many smaller ones. Yudhishthira tells him that a kingdom survives by remembering. Bhima tells him the fallen were lions and that he comes from lion stock, so he had better eat properly. Arjuna tells him courage is not noise. Nakula tells him nobility begins in conduct before it appears in ornaments. Sahadeva tells him time carries all things, so stand straight while you can. Kunti tells him grief is not shameful, but self-pity is useless. That is 6 different roads laid under one pair of feet. No wonder the boy sometimes looks dazed. He is watched constantly. If he climbs too high in the garden fig tree, 3 guards arrive, then Nakula, then Bhima, who immediately climbs higher. If he coughs once at dinner, herbs appear from every direction. If he rides too fast, Arjuna hears about it before he dismounts. If he wanders toward the armory, Sahadeva somehow already knows. How? No one can say. You begin to suspect Sahadeva simply receives reports from the moon. Poor Parikshit, a prince cannot even scrape his knee in peace, and yet he is loved so completely that the air around him almost glows with it. During festivals, the city watches him from beneath garlands and lamp smoke. Women throw rice and flower petals. Old men bless him. Veterans who have seen too much soften when the boy salutes them with fierce seriousness. He wears tiny jewels and looks faintly annoyed by their weight. A child would rather run than gleam. Still, he learns. He learns how to sit through rituals without fidgeting too much, how to touch elders' feet, how to accept blessings, how to listen while bards sing of people whose absence made room for his life. That burden comes slowly, not in one crushing revelation, in moments. The first time he realizes, the entire court falls quiet when he enters. The first time he hears servants whisper that the line continues. The first time he catches Uttara watching him with pride and terror mixed together, as though life once tried to take him and might still remember the path back. Uttara herself is a tender, watchful presence, not as stern as Kunti, not as enormous as Bhima, not as haunted as Arjuna. With her, the prince is allowed to be only her son. She keeps some of Abhimanyu's things wrapped in cloth, a sash, a pair of armlets, a training knife too small now for any grown man's hand. Sometimes, on monsoon evenings, when rain drums on the eaves and the palace smells of wet earth, lamp oil, and steaming rice, she unfolds those memories and lets Parikshit see them. She tells him how young his father was, how beautiful, how stubborn, how loved. But she also tells him small truths. That Abhimanyu laughed with his mouth full, that he hated waking before sunrise, that he could be impatient, that once he lost a wrestling bout and sulked for half a day. Those details save the dead from becoming unbearable. They make room for a son to love a father without kneeling before a statue. You sit with them while rain pearls at the window lattice. The lamps burn low. The cloth glows gold in the small room. Parikshit touches the old sash as if it might pulse. When he is older, the training hardens. The palace shifts with him. Toy bows become real ones. Lessons in fairness become lessons in law. Games in the courtyard become drills in the yard. His shoulders broaden. His questions sharpen. The old warriors begin, little by little, to stop seeing only the rescued infant and start seeing the king approaching through the child. Still, childhood does not surrender gracefully. One afternoon, he escapes lessons by hiding in Bhima's pantry. A bold plan, a foolish plan. Bhima's pantry is not a place for secrecy. It smells like roasted flour, clarified butter, cardamom, and enough pickles to feed a siege. The prince is discovered not by guards, but by sneezing after pepper catches his nose. Bhama finds him behind a grain jar, flour on his cheek, eating contraband sweets with the solemn concentration of a priest at sacrifice. Bhima should scold him. Instead, he shares the sweets. Both are punished by Kunti later. Bhima accepts this with the resigned face of a man who has survived war only to be defeated by an elderly mother's stare. In another season, Parikshit insists on joining Arjuna at dawn practice. He arrives half awake, hair untied, noble in intention and miserable in execution. The air is cold enough to sting. Mist lies over the practice ground. Somewhere, a conch moans from a temple by the river. Arjuna says if the prince wants a warrior's discipline, he must greet the sun like one. Parikshit agrees, then nearly falls asleep standing up while the grooms prepare the horses. Even Arjuna laughs at that. Those laughs matter more than anyone says, because this is a house built after ruin. Laughter inside it is a kind of rebuilding too. The boy grows, so do the silences around him. He begins to notice when elders stop talking as he enters, begins to understand that his future is not a private matter, begins to sense the long road laid before him by hands both loving and exhausted. One evening, after court, he finds Yudhishthira alone. The king is looking west, where the light turns the palace edges red as embers. Parikshit asks, in the straightforward way children sometimes wound without meaning to, whether everyone is raising him for himself or for the ones who are gone. Yudhishthira does not answer quickly. Outside, parrots wheel toward the groves. Inside, the last light catches the dust in the air. At length he tells the boy the truest thing he can. Both, for a moment, Parikshit says nothing. Then he leans against his grandfather-uncle's knee and accepts it. What else can he do? He was born into an unfinished sentence. He will have to become its ending. By now you can feel the shape of him changing. The rescued infant has become the listening child. The listening child is becoming the heir. And all around him, Hastinapura keeps teaching. The kitchens teach abundance after famine. The shrines teach reverence after pride. The armory teaches caution. The court teaches patience. The widow's white garments teach him what victory costs. The old men with scarred hands teach him how memory survives in posture, in silence, in the way someone looks toward a name they cannot bear to speak casually. At night, when the palace quiets, he sometimes walks the moonlit corridors alone for a few moments before some watchful soul finds him. The lamps gutter low. The marble is cool. Moonlight lies in silver bars across the floor. From the women's quarters comes the faint rustle of cloth. From distant stables, a horse stamps once and settles. This is the world that made him. Not innocence, not peace exactly. Something steadier than that. A child raised among ashes learns quickly where fire has been. A child loved by survivors learns that love can be fierce, clumsy, watchful, and heavy all at once. Parikshit grows in all of it, under 6 shadows, inside one enormous hope. And before long, the palace that once bent over his cradle begins to do something else. It begins to step back, just a little, enough for him to stand. Because beyond the courtyards, beyond the lesson rooms and incense and old grief, time is moving again. And somewhere far off, already, the age is changing. And then the roads open. A king must leave the palace if he wants to know what still lives under his rule. For years the roads had carried tribute, pilgrims, merchants, and the slow return of ordinary life. Bullock carts creaked past new-planted fields. Potters set wet clay in the sun. Washermen beat cloth by the river. Children who had no memory of Kurukshetra except in the faces of their elders ran through dust with reed toys and loud opinions. Then one day, the road from the west brought something else, a chariot. Fast, too fast for good news. You can feel it before anyone speaks. The horses are lathered dark at the neck. The wheels spit grit. The guard at the gate straightens, and the court servants stop mid-step, brass trays in hand. Even the pigeons on the palace eaves seem to go quiet. Daruka has come from Dwaraka. He is grey with salt and travel. His clothes smell of sea wind, sweat, and smoke. He enters the hall like a man carrying an ocean on his back. When he bows before Yudhishthira, the whole court leans toward him without moving an inch. And then the words fall. The Yadavas are gone. Not in some distant abstract way. Gone the way a lamp goes when the oil is finished. Gone the way a storm strips a tree in one night. Prabhasa, drunken quarrels, grass turned iron in angry hands, kinsmen striking kinsmen down beneath the sea wind while the gulls wheeled overhead. Balarama has left the world. Krishna too. There it is, the soundless crack through everything. No one in the hall wails at first. The grief is too large for noise. It enters like winter air under a door. You are standing on the cool stone floor when Arjuna rises. For a moment, he looks young again, as if he might reach for Gandiva and fix the whole world by force. Then the moment passes. His face goes pale under the court lamps. Krishna's friend, Krishna's chosen archer, Krishna's brother in all but blood. He leaves at once for Dwaraka. The palace waits. Days lengthen. Oil burns low in the bronze lamps. Messengers come and go. Uttara keeps Parikshit close. The boy is no longer an infant now, not the tiny still form who once lay against folded cloth and silence. He is old enough to notice the adults speaking softly, old enough to understand when laughter suddenly stops, old enough to ask where his granduncle Arjuna has gone and why no one answers quickly. The air itself feels changed. In the courtyards, peacocks still scream at dawn. The cooks still stir rice in broad copper pots. Sandalwood smoke still curls upward before the household shrines. But a shadow has settled over everything. The kind that comes when someone you thought was woven into the world's fabric is suddenly not there. At last, Arjuna returns. He does not return like a conqueror. He comes back carrying the sea in his eyes. His chariot is dusty. The banner hangs tired. The man who steps down from it is still Arjuna, but something has been taken from him. You can see it in the way he pauses before entering the hall, as though one more threshold may be too much. He reports it all. Dwaraka emptied of joy. Vasudeva bent with grief. The women gathered in fear. The sea swallowing the shining city street by street, towers slipping beneath waves, doorways filling with foam, the salt wind blowing through palaces that had once laughed with Krishna's clan. And then, worst of all for Arjuna, the road home, raiders came, common men, rough men, men he would once have scattered like dry leaves. He reached for his greatness and found only his own age. Gandiva felt heavy. The celestial weapons did not rise to his call. The old fire was gone. Time had put its hand on his shoulder at last. He says none of this dramatically. That would be easier to bear. He says it plainly. That plainness lands harder than any cry. Bhima's great hands clench on the arms of his seat. Nakula lowers his face. Sahadeva looks toward the floor, as if reading something written there. Yudhishthira sits very still, and that stillness is almost terrible. Parikshit is in the hall that day, close to Uttara. You can imagine the boy watching his elders as children do, alert to every movement. He may not understand all the names. He understands enough. Another pillar has fallen. Another room in the world has gone dark. Outside, the hot wind drags dust across the courtyard. Somewhere, a conch sounds for evening worship. Inside, the age turns. That night, the brothers sit together long after the servants withdraw. Lamps tremble in pools of gold around them. The smell of burnt wick and jasmine thickens in the room. No armor now, no court display. Just old men, though the world still calls them heroes. Yudhishthira speaks first. The time has come. He does not say it with drama either. He says it like someone acknowledging rain already falling. Krishna has gone. The Yadavas have passed. Their own strength is thinning. The work for which they were born is finished. The kingdom has peace. The line endures. The last duty now is departure. Bhima does not like this. Of course, he does not. Bhima has argued with hunger, injustice, mountains, demons, cousins, and on at least one memorable afternoon, a stubborn kitchen door. Leaving a kingdom voluntarily feels to him like a joke told by a very irritating philosopher. But even Bhima knows. Arjuna knows more than any of them after Dwaraka. Nakula and Sahadeva know because they have always heard time approaching before others do. Kunti knows too. Her face, when the news reaches her, does not break. It deepens. In the days that follow, Hastinapura changes its breathing. Preparations begin, but not for war this time, not for festival either, for ending. You walk those palace corridors, and everything feels softer, almost ceremonial. Storerooms open, account books are brought, seals pressed into wax, gifts assigned, ministers summoned one by one. The sound is not the ringing clang of weapons, but the murmur of parchment, the whisper of silk, the measured tap of ivory counters on low tables. Parikshit is called often now. He comes into rooms where he had once been sent away. He stands beside maps. He listens to names of provinces, harvest routes, river tolls, border tribes, granary reserves. His tutors, who spent years trying to make him sit still long enough to learn taxation, now look unbearably satisfied. At last, they seem to think. At last, the The boy cannot escape. The crown prince discovers what every prince eventually learns. Kingdoms are not mostly made of banners and elephants. They are made of storage jars, irrigation channels, tax disputes, grain rot, road repairs, and 3 different men insisting the same mango grove belongs to their grandfather. It is not glamorous, it is very important, and that, Yudhishthira teaches him, is kingship. You are there in the council chamber when the lessons sharpen. The polished wood smells faintly of cedar oil. Outside the lattice windows, parrots chatter in the neem trees. Inside, Yudhishthira speaks of justice not as thunder, but as balance. Hear all sides, delay anger. Let the law be like a well-built scale. Feed the people first. Watch the treasury, but do not worship it. Punish when needed, but never from appetite. Bhima teaches differently. His lessons arrive like monsoon bursts. A king, he says in his own fashion, must make sure the roads are safe, the grain measures are honest, and the bullies afraid. He demonstrates this by dragging Parikshit through barracks, stables, kitchens, and wrestling yards. If Yudhishthira is the lamp of kingship, Bhima is the door bar. He also continues, despite the seriousness of the hour, to slip the young king sweets. This has not improved with age. One afternoon, a palace physician catches Bhima handing Parikshit fried cakes, dripping with jaggery, just before an archery lesson. The physician protests. Bhima looks offended, as if accused of poisoning the line of Bharata. Parikshit, caught with both hands sticky, tries to look regal. He does not succeed. Even in sorrow, the household has these moments. They help. Arjuna's lessons are quieter now. He walks with Parikshit in the practice ground at dawn, when the dust is cool and the sky is pearl grey. He speaks of vigilance, of not trusting skill alone, of the day weapons answer and the day they do not, of how kings must not become drunk on the memory of past victories, whether their own or inherited. Sometimes he shows the boy how to stand, how to breathe, how to let the arrow leave without snatching at it. Sometimes he simply watches him and says very little. There is tenderness there, and regret too. Parikshit is Abhimanyu's son. When Arjuna looks at him, father and grandson blur for a moment in the morning light. Nakula teaches grace, how to receive ambassadors without giving away thought, how to sit a horse that smells your fear, how to dress simply when simplicity serves, richly when splendor is required, and never like a fool who lost a private battle with his jewelry. This last lesson is more useful than it sounds. Royal ornaments can be surprisingly complicated. Someone always gets tangled. Sahadeva teaches what lies beneath appearance: calendars, omens, seasonal timing, the mood of neighboring courts, the importance of asking the oldest shepherd in a region how the rains behaved 10 years ago. Sahadeva can make the movement of stars sound practical, which is a rare talent. And Kunti. Kunti gives him what none of the others can: endurance. She sits with Parikshit in late afternoon when the sunlight turns honey-colored on the courtyard walls. The air smells of tulsi and warm stone. She tells him what it means to carry the house forward after fire, after exile, after humiliation, after loss. Not dramatically, not with self-pity. She tells him as one who has carried too much and remained standing. She does not promise life will soften for him. She teaches him how to stand when it does not. Then comes the day of laying down. The court assembles at sunrise. The hall has been swept until the floors shine. Fresh water has been sprinkled to settle the dust. Garlands of white flowers hang from the pillars, and their fragrance drifts gently through the room. Priests chant low, steady hymns that move like river water under everything else. Conch shells sound once, then fade. You stand in that hall and feel the strange majesty of it. Not triumph, not grief alone, something quieter, the dignity of people who know the hour and do not run from it. The Pandavas enter not in full war splendor, but in kingly simplicity. Yudhishthira wears the crown one last time. Bhima's shoulders still look capable of frightening armies, though his hair is silvering. Arjuna's face is lined by roads no map can show. Nakula and Sahadeva seem almost luminous in white garments, like moonlight given human form. Draupadi comes too, grave and radiant, her jewels softer than in younger years, their fire dimmed to a glow. Parikshit stands before them. He is young enough that the crown waiting nearby looks, frankly, a little ambitious, young enough that you can still see the boy in the set of his mouth. But he stands straight. This is the moment. You can feel it in your own chest. The priests complete the rites. Sacred water is brought in golden vessels. Mantras rise and fall. A flame crackles in a copper brazier fed with ghee, and the smell is rich and sweet in the morning air. The boy is anointed. Water touches his head, shoulders, hands. The kingdom, in all its visible and invisible weight, begins to descend. Then Yudhishthira removes his crown. Slowly, no flourish, no regret displayed for the room to admire. He lifts it with both hands as one lifts something consecrated. Gems catch the firelight. Gold flashes, then settles. For years, that crown had rested above a mind burdened by war and conscience. It had governed a repaired world. Now it moves forward. When Yudhishthira places it upon Parikshit's head, it does what all great crowns do at first. It looks slightly too large. Not absurdly, just enough to remind everyone that kingship is always larger than the one wearing it. The court sees it. The court loves him for it. Bhima removes his own ornaments next. Armlets, heavy rings, the jeweled belt of state. One by one, they are laid aside. You hear the soft clink of gold on gold. Arjuna unfastens the warrior's marks he has carried for half a lifetime. Nakula and Sahadeva do the same. Draupadi's attendants receive her royal ornaments in folded cloths, each gem wrapped as carefully as if it were memory itself. Old heroes removing splendor with tired hands. There is something unbearably beautiful in it. Blessings follow, not grand speeches. Those would only disturb the gravity of the hour. Yudhishthira blesses Parikshit to rule with steadiness, to protect without cruelty, to remember that a king belongs to the people as much as the people belong to the crown. Bhima puts his great hand on the young king's shoulder, and the gesture is almost comic in scale. Parikshit briefly disappears under it. Bhima blesses him with strength, appetite for justice, and enemies sensible enough to stay nervous. Arjuna blesses him for skill joined to humility, Nakula for dignity, Sahadeva for wisdom before action, Draupadi for endurance and honor. Kunti, when her turn comes, raises her hand over her great-grandson and closes her eyes for a long moment. Her blessing is silent at first. Then she gives him the one gift she knows cannot fail: courage that survives sorrow. The assembly murmurs its assent. Somewhere in the hall, an old minister weeps without trying to hide it. Outside, the city waits. When the rites are complete, Parikshit comes to the high balcony overlooking Hastinapura. The people below are dense as woven cloth, white turbans, bright saris, market shawls, spears flashing in ordered ranks. The smell of sun-warmed stone rises from the courtyard. So does incense, so does dust, so does the living breath of a city that has suffered enough to understand what continuity costs. They look up, and he looks down at what is now his. Not a fresh empire, not some gleaming world untouched by grief. A repaired kingdom, a kingdom stitched together by law, habit, memory, widowhood, harvest, mourning, birth, taxes paid on time, roads kept open, borders held, shrines tended, and people getting up every morning anyway. That is what he inherits. That afternoon, the final private farewells begin. The Pandavas exchange royal cloth for garments fit for pilgrims. The transformation is startling. A little sandal paste, simple linen, staffs instead of weapons. The body remembers majesty even when dressed in renunciation, but still, the change catches in the throat. You watch servants bow low and step aside, trying not to sob. Bhima without court ornaments looks somehow more himself. Arjuna in plain cloth looks lighter and more breakable at once. Yudhishthira seems already half on another road. Draupadi's face is calm, though no one who knows her mistakes calm for ease. They are leaving the palace, leaving the throne, leaving the long labor of holding a wounded kingdom together. At the great gate, they turn once more. Parikshit bows to them, deeply, not as a child, as a king to those who made his kingship possible. The morning is warm already. Dust lifts around ankles. Harness bells jingle somewhere in the outer courtyard. A temple bell sounds from the city. Then another answers farther away. The sky over Hastinapura is clear, washed pale blue. No one tries to stop them. That is part of the sorrow and part of the honor. They go north, not quickly. Old lions do not hurry for anyone, but steadily. Past the gate, past the guards, past the city that had held their youth, their humiliation, their rule. The people watch until white garments blur in sunlight. Parikshit remains standing long after they vanish. The crown is still new on him. Its weight has not settled yet. The kingdom has. You can almost feel the shift inside him. The boy, loved and protected by survivors, giving way to the king who must now protect others. There is no trumpet burst for that change, no visible lightning. It happens quietly, the way dawn changes a room. Behind him, the palace waits for orders. Before him, the roads of the realm spread wide. And in the high halls of Hastinapura, where old grief still lingers like sandalwood in carved beams, the last child saved from the ashes takes his first full breath as king. Dawn comes softly over Parikshit's kingdom. Not the red war-drunk dawn of Kurukshetra. Not smoke, not carrion birds, not broken chariots half sunk in mud. This is a different morning, pale gold light over wet fields. Egrets stepping through rice paddies, thin blue smoke rising from cooking fires. The long sigh of oxen pulling plows through dark earth, made generous by recent rain. The world has healed enough to look innocent again. And that is almost the strangest part. Parikshit rides out from Hastinapura with a light guard and a king's restless habit of seeing things for himself. He is no child now. The crown sits properly on him. His shoulders have widened. His hands know reins, bows, petitions, grain tallies, border disputes, and the exhausting art of hearing two liars politely before deciding which one lies less. He has inherited a repaired world. Repaired things have seams. You ride with him now, if you like. The road leaves the city and unwinds through farms and mango groves. Dust rises in little tan ghosts under the horses' hooves. The The smell is warm earth, dung fires, sesame oil, and crushed neem leaves. Somewhere ahead, a temple bell keeps striking the hour with sleepy stubbornness. Parikshit watches everything. An old well rebuilt, a bridge repaired after monsoon wash, a shrine repainted, children racing barefoot beside the royal horses until their mothers shout them back, half terrified and half proud. He notices the irrigation ditches are clean. He notices the grain stores are guarded. He notices a village headman bowing too quickly, which usually means accounts worth checking later. This is kingship, not just jewels and parasols, mud, ledgers, complaints about goats. Bhima would have laughed and called that the true battlefield of rulers, then stolen a sweet cake from the kitchen while saying it. By now, those old voices live in memory, but they ride with him all the same. Parikshit moves through the land his grandfathers left behind, and the land answers him with ordinary signs of peace. Women threshing grain, potters turning clay under damp palms, washermen slapping cloth against river stones, flocks lifting suddenly from millet fields in a burst of white wings and noise. You can feel the morning warming. The iron fittings on the chariot begin to heat under the sun. Leather reins grow tacky in the hand. A cicada starts its long metallic shriek from a tamarind tree, as if the day itself has begun to buzz. Then, little by little, something changes. It is hard to say what first warns him. Maybe the silence. A stretch of road should have birdsong, a herdsman's call, cartwheels, someone arguing over lentils. India is rarely quiet for long, but this patch ahead feels emptied out, as though sound itself has stepped aside. Maybe it is the horses. They toss their heads, snort. One sidesteps for no visible reason. Maybe it is the wind, hot, but with a strange edge to it. Not storm, not rain, just a thin unpleasantness, like air that has passed over metal, left too long in the sun. Parikshit raises one hand. The small escort slows. Now you see the place. A roadside clearing where the earth has been trampled. Hoofprints stamped deep in damp mud near a watering place. A few reeds bent flat. Dust stirred into the sharp smell of bruised grass. And there, in the middle of it, a cow and a bull. At first, they look merely stray. Then the scene comes clear. The cow is gaunt and trembling, tears wet on her long lashes, ribs showing under her hide as though grief itself has been chewing at her. Her coat, once bright, is dulled by dust. She stands unevenly, head lowered, breath shuddering out in frightened bursts. Beside her is a bull, white as river foam, gone grey with road dust. He's trying to stand on one leg, one. The other three are drawn up, broken in strength, if not in form, as if they no longer remember how to bear weight. His whole body quivers with the effort. His flank jumps. His eyes are wide and dark and filled with a patient suffering worse than panic. And striking them is a man dressed like a king. That catches the eye first. The costume of power, fine cloth, ornaments, a belt that glints, a crown piece or crest. But it sits wrong on him, like stolen dignity. He holds a club and lashes at the beasts with mean, eager movements. Not the measured force of a warrior, the ugly excitement of someone hurting the helpless because he can. The ring of metal on metal sounds small in the stillness as Parikshit's guard reaches for weapons. The man turns. His face is dark with fear, cunning, and that quick, shifting look of one who belongs nowhere honest. He has chosen a royal appearance because wickedness loves a good disguise. But no true king stands over a weeping cow with a raised club. Parikshit does not wait. He leaps down. The scabbard knocks against his thigh. His bow is in hand. The sword comes partly free, with a dry, bright hiss. Sun strikes the blade. The horses behind him stamp and snort, catching the charge in the air. You are standing in the dust with him now. You smell mud, hot leather, animal fear, and the sharp tang of worked iron. This is the moment. You can feel it. Parikshit's anger rises clean and immediate. Not court anger, not the slow heat of negotiations. This is warrior anger, ancient, protective, bright as fire catching oil. He demands to know who this creature is, dressed like a ruler and behaving like a jackal. He asks what kind of coward strikes the weak in open daylight. He wants a name, a lineage, a reason. The man falters. The bull still trembles on one leg. The cow's breath comes rough and fast. Parikshit turns first to them, because even in anger, he sees they are not ordinary animals. There is too much sorrow in them, too much meaning. The clearing itself feels charged, as if the world has held its breath to watch this meeting. He asks the bull who has done this to him. The bull does not answer as most creatures would. He answers like an old sage wrapped in an animal form, calm though pain shakes him, careful though the world has grown cruel. He says suffering has many fathers. Some blame fate, some blame karma, some blame time, some blame the self, some blame the gods. Wise people do not rush to accuse. Parikshit hears him and knows this is dharma, not a symbol painted on a wall, not a word in a priest's mouth. Dharma itself, walking the road in the shape of a wounded bull. And the cow beside him, dusty, grieving, stripped of ease, is the earth. Bhudevi, the patient mother of everyone. She has fed kings and thieves, saints and fools, widows and newborns, warriors and wandering mendicants. She has carried the wheels of chariots, the roots of banyans, the foundations of cities. Now she stands thin with sorrow, because an age has turned. Parikshit lowers his head for a moment. Even his rage changes flavor then. It grows deeper. He asks the earth why she mourns. She mourns for many things. For Krishna gone from the world. For truth thinning out. For compassion growing tired. For purity weakened. For the old steadiness no longer steady. The bull once stood on 4 legs. Tapas, purity, compassion, truth. In other ages, he bore the world firmly. Now 3 have been battered down. Only truth remains, and even that is shaking. The wind moves through the reeds with a dry whisper. A vulture circles high above, saying nothing. Parikshit turns back to the false king. Now he sees him fully. This is Kali, not the great dark mother, not the goddess. This is Kali of the age of decline, the spirit of corrosion, the thin crack spreading through good order, the restless appetite that enters households through greed, enters friendships through suspicion, enters kingdoms through weakness, and smiles while doing it. He has already entered. That is the chill of it. Not at the gates, not in rumor, not someday. Here, on the king's road, club in hand, Parikshit lifts his sword. Gaily drops at once. That is one thing about corruption. It swaggers while the helpless are near. It becomes very humble when the blade points back. The false king throws down his pride with impressive speed. One moment, he is striking the earth. The next, he is clinging to life like a man trying to gather spilled grain in a storm. He bows, pleads, trembles. He admits who he is. He says the age belongs to him now. The wheel of time has turned. He cannot be erased by one king's anger, however righteous. This is his era. He asks for refuge. It is an infuriating request. You can almost hear Bhima, somewhere in memory, saying refuge for this one, should be the flat side of a mace. Simple, efficient, very satisfying. But Parikshit is Yudhishthira's grandson too. A king does not strike down one who has surrendered and asked for shelter. That law is old, older than resentment, older than convenience, older than a king's mood on any particular afternoon. So there he stands in hot roadside dust, sword lifted, face hard, caught between two truths. Kali is poison. A surrendered being must be given protection. This is why ruling is difficult. If it were only a matter of hating the wicked, every angry man with a weapon would call himself just. Parikshit does not sheath the sword at once. He thinks. The sun beats on his helmet rim. Sweat slides down his back under layers of cloth and mail. A fly worries the corner of one horse's eye. The bull still trembles. The cow still weeps softly, low and terrible, like a flute note held too long. Then Parikshit speaks. If Kali cannot be ended by force, he will be contained. If this age must come, it will not roam freely through every field and household like wildfire in dry reeds. Parikshit tells him he may dwell only in places where human beings invite their own undoing. Not in temples, not in honest homes, not in clear water and morning prayer, not in the simple labor of farmers or the clean trade of merchants or the quiet vows of the faithful. He gives Kali a list. Gambling, where truth is bartered for chance, where brothers become strangers over a throw of dice, where eyes go feverish and promises rot before the game is even finished. At that word, the air itself seems to remember Hastinapura's older shame. Dice clicking on polished wood, a queen dragged by the hair, an empire split by a game. Parikshit was born into that memory. He knows what one loaded board can do. So gambling becomes one of Kali's houses. Next, intoxication, places where the mind is willingly dimmed, where judgment loosens and shame packs its bags and leaves by the back door, where a man speaks one foolish sentence and must live inside it for 20 years. The memory of the Yadavas hangs behind that choice, like smoke over a ruined shore. Drink had undone a clan that no enemy could overcome. So intoxication becomes another house. Then illicit desire. Desire itself is not the problem. The world runs on it. Flowers open for it. Rivers seek the sea because of it. Men and women meet because of it. But desire cut loose from tenderness, vow, or restraint becomes hungry in a new way. It enters through the eyes and empties out the heart. It makes a person treat another person like an object bought in a market. So Kali may dwell there too. Then violence, not battle undertaken for duty, not the sorrowful necessity of defense. Something uglier, the delight in harm, cruelty for pleasure. Striking the weak because they cannot strike back. The hand that lifts for no reason except that it enjoys the lifting. That place is already familiar to Kali. He had been standing in it. Parikshit names it plainly. And still, Kali begs. He says those places are not enough. He says people avoid them at least some of the time. He needs a steadier dwelling, somewhere finer, somewhere he can move unnoticed among respectable men. There is a pause then, a bad one, because Parikshit knows at once what answer may come, and he hates it before he gives it. Gold, not wealth honestly used, not ornaments on a bride, not gifts to the learned, not coin paid fairly for labor. Gold itself is not cursed. But where gold sits, greed gathers quickly. Suspicion follows, then lies, then bargaining with the soul. Men bow to righteousness until a brighter metal enters the room. Gold can live in a treasury and still rot a kingdom if the heart attached to it goes soft. Parikshit gives Kali that place too. Gold, there, in greed hoarded wealth, in the fevered shine that turns brothers into rivals and judges into merchants and priests into flatterers and kings into frightened accountants. Kali's eyes lift at that. It is the best house of all, because gambling needs dice, drink needs cups, desire needs occasions, violence needs a weapon. But gold sits quietly in a box and does the work from there. The permission is given, the boundaries are drawn. Parikshit does not smile. He knows he has not won some cheerful victory on the roadside. He has done something necessary and incomplete, which is often the shape of kingship. Kali bows again, this time with relief. He withdraws, not vanished, not destroyed, simply placed. Contained is not the same as gone. That truth settles over the clearing like late afternoon dust. The wind shifts, sound begins to return. A bird calls from the peepal tree. One of the soldiers exhales loudly, only now realizing he had been holding his breath like a fool. Another wipes his palms on his tunic and pretends he was merely adjusting his grip. Parikshit turns to the bull. Dharma grows steadier in his presence, not restored. Fully? Not yet. This is not Satya Yuga. No one is waking into a perfect age tomorrow morning. But the trembling eases. Truth stands firmer when a ruler protects it. The earth, too, lifts her head. Her sorrow remains. It will remain. But kingship has done what it can do for one afternoon on one road. It has seen. It has stopped the blow. It has drawn a line. Sometimes that is how the world is kept livable. Not by erasing darkness forever, by meeting it at the roadside and saying, "No farther than this." You stand there with them a moment longer. The mud near the watering place is cooling now where shadow has reached it. Flies drift back over the reeds. The metallic smell of weapons softens beneath the sweeter scent of trampled grass. A thin breeze comes over the fields, carrying water smell from some unseen tank and the far-off smoke of evening cooking fires. Day is leaning toward dusk. Parikshit orders that the beasts be left unharmed and honored. He offers reverence, not possession. No tether, no display. One does not drag Dharma into the capital for applause. The king remounts, but something in him has changed. Before this day, he ruled a kingdom recovering from disaster. After this day, he rules an age in decline. That is heavier. A flood you can fight with embankments, a famine with grain stores, raiders with patrols, corrupt officials with punishment. But an age enters through habits, through appetite, through fatigue, through one careless compromise at a time. Parikshit knows this now in his bones. The road home looks the same as before. Fields, trees, sunset gathering in the irrigation channels like molten copper. Women carrying water pots against the orange sky. A herd of goats creating total nonsense in the middle of the path because goats have never recognized royal authority and do not plan to begin today. One little buck plants itself before the king's horse and stares as if evaluating him. Even Parikshit laughs at that. For a breath, the world loosens. The escort laughs too, grateful for the excuse. One soldier clucks his tongue and shoos the creature aside. The goat bounds away with the offended dignity of a courtier insulted at dinner. Then they ride on. Evening deepens. The western sky burns saffron, then copper, then plum. Cranes fly home in a long slanting line. The smell of the land changes with the cooling air. Wet hay, cow dung, frying lentils, jasmine opening somewhere beyond a courtyard wall. You can feel the tiredness of the day settling into the king's shoulders. But not weakness, vigilance. He has seen Kali wearing royal cloth. That means he must watch not only enemies at borders, but rot in splendid rooms. Not only thieves in forests, but greed in treasuries. Not only drunkards in alleys, but the glitter that enters a nobleman's eye when gold is counted. And perhaps, though he does not say it aloud, he must watch himself, because kings carry gold. Kings judge gamblers. Kings punish violence. Kings are praised by flattering mouths. Kings are not outside the age they govern. That is the uneasy wisdom of that roadside meeting. Kali can be confined, named, driven into corners. But those corners are built into human life. Dice boards, drinking halls, secret rooms, slaughter grounds, treasure chambers, doors every kingdom already has. Hastinapura's lamps are being lit when Parikshit returns. One by one, they bloom along corridors and gateways, small circles of gold in the gathering blue. Conches sound from evening worship. Cows shuffle into pens. The palace stones still hold the day's heat. Servants hurry with brass trays, oil, folded cloth, messages, supper. Life continues with impressive confidence, as if the whole world had not just changed on a muddy road. That too is kingship. You see the danger, then you come home and sign the grain order. He pauses before entering the great hall. Above him, the first stars are out, faint in the purple dark. Somewhere in the city, a flute has begun playing, soft and wandering. The notes drift through warm air, scented with lamp ghee and night-blooming flowers. For now, Dharma stands. For now, earth still bears the weight. For now, Kali has been checked and named, but the age has entered the kingdom, and once a thing has entered, it does not need to shout. Sometimes it waits, quietly, in the rattle of dice, in the bottom of a cup, in a glance held too long, in a hand lifted too easily, in the shine of gold under lamplight. Once the curse is spoken, the palace changes sound. Every footstep begins counting toward the seventh day. But before that sound comes the forest. The hunt begins in heat. Not the soft gold heat of morning, but the hammering kind that presses down on helmet and shoulders and makes the air itself taste of copper and dust. King Parikshit rides out beneath a pale sky with bow in hand, following the quick brown flash of deer through dry grass and thorn. The land is green in places now. His kingdom has healed where it can. Fields wave, wells are full, smoke rises from cooking fires in distant villages, but the forest keeps its own counsel. Inside it, old roots grip the earth like knotted fingers, and sunlight comes through in broken coins. You are there with him when the chase stretches too long. Hooves have been left behind. Servants drift back. The king presses farther in, drawn by the animal's vanishing shape. Branches slap at his arms. Leaves snag his hair. Sweat gathers under his jewels and runs down his spine. Royalty is very grand in the court. In the middle of a hot forest, it mostly means you are overdressed. He follows tracks over baked ground, across a shallow stream already shrinking in the sun, past trees buzzing with insects, loud enough to sound like 1,000 tiny rattles. Somewhere, a peacock calls. Somewhere, monkeys scold from high branches, as if the whole business is beneath them. Still, the deer escapes. Parikshit slows at last. His throat burns. His tongue feels heavy. The bow that seemed light in the morning now pulls at his hand. Hunger joins the thirst. Irritation slips in through the side door, the way it always does, quietly, almost politely. This is how trouble often arrives, not with drums, with fatigue. He looks around for water and sees, at some distance through the trees, a clearing, a hermitage. The place seems to have grown out of the earth rather than been built on it. There are low huts of wood and leaves, a little altar darkened by old smoke, clay vessels near a stone platform, kusa grass drying in the shade, a narrow path swept clean with care. Deer move there without fear. Birds hop close to the ground. The whole clearing carries that strange stillness some holy places have, as if even the wind remembers to lower its voice. You can smell it before you fully step in. Cool shade, damp earth, old ashes, crushed tulsi leaves, bark, and the faint sweetness of wildflowers warming at the edge of the trees. Parikshit enters, expecting what any king of that world expects: water, a greeting, a seat, at least the lifting of eyes, because that is the old rhythm. A traveler comes, especially a king, and the hermitage responds. A host appears. Someone brings a ladle of water, maybe a handful of berries, maybe a respectful word. The world acknowledges the world, but no one comes. At the center of the clearing sits the sage Shamika. He is thin as a branch and steady as a mountain root. His matted hair is tied high. His skin is darkened by sun and austerity. He sits on a simple seat of grass, spine straight, hands quiet, breath so subtle you would miss it if you were not looking for it. His eyes are closed. He is far away and fully present at once, sunk deep inside a silence that has nothing to do with sleep. Parikshit steps closer. No movement. He announces himself. He gives his name, his title, the courtesy due from a guest and a ruler both. He asks for water. He asks whether the sage has seen a deer pass through. His voice is dry and sharper than he intends. Still nothing, not even a blink. The flies circle lazily in the warm air. Somewhere near the huts, a potlet taps in the breeze. A squirrel streaks up a tree trunk and freezes. The sage does not stir. You can feel the moment beginning to tighten. Parikshit is not an evil man. That matters. It matters because if he were monstrous, this would be simple. But he is tired, thirsty, proud, and used to the fact that his presence changes rooms. Most days he bears kingship with care. Most days he remembers his grandfather's patience, his uncle's discipline, his own duty. Most days, this day is hot. This day, the deer ran. This day, the silence answers him like an insult. A thought enters his mind, small, mean, and foolish. Not a thunderbolt of rage, not some grand villain's vow. Just that little urge to wound when you feel ignored, to prove that the person who did not notice you will notice something. On the ground nearby lies a dead snake, dried by sun and time, limp and weightless as an old rope. Parikshit sees it. And instead of turning away, instead of laughing at himself, instead of walking to the stream he has not yet bothered to search for, he lowers the tip of his bow. The snake lifts. It dangles there, ridiculous and sad. For one heartbeat, this might still stop. He might drop it. He might shake his head and think better of the whole thing. But pettiness, once it gets its foot in the door, likes to finish the visit. He drapes the dead snake over the sage's shoulders like a mock garland. That is all. No blow, no battle, no great sin announced by lightning. Just a dead snake resting across the neck of a man too deep in meditation to know it is there. The absurdity of it makes it worse. A king of the Kuru line, heir of Arjuna, grandson of Abhimanyu, terror of wrongdoers, conqueror of Kali on the roadside. And here he is behaving like an offended boy who has found the nearest available insult. The sage remains motionless. Shamika does not break meditation. He does not open his eyes. He does not even know. The forest keeps breathing. You stand in the clearing and can almost hear the mistake hardening behind him. Parikshit looks once at what he has done. And now, because anger cools fast after it gets what it wanted, shame begins its work. He knows at once that the act is beneath him. That is the cruel mercy of such moments. Sometimes you understand your own smallness immediately. You do not even get the comfort of believing you were right. He turns and leaves. No triumph, no satisfaction. The hunt is gone from him now. The deer might as well be missed. His thirst remains, but another discomfort has joined it, one that no water pot can fix. The bow feels heavier than before. Even the cicadas seem too loud. As he walks back through the trees, the sun lowering toward afternoon, memory begins its quiet assault. His elders rise before him, one by one. Yudhishthira, with patient eyes. Arjuna, with that weary nobility he carried after too much loss. Kunti's grave composure. Krishna's unreadable half-smile, the one that always seemed to say he had seen people throw away peace for less. Parikshit does not need anyone to explain what kind of act he has committed. He knows. The smell of forest dust follows him. Sweat dries cold on his skin. A vulture circles high overhead. He tells himself perhaps it will amount to nothing. The sage had not noticed. No harm done. A stupid jest in bad taste. An ugly flicker. Finished. But the world is not finished. Back at the hermitage, boys gathering wood and fruit begin to return at evening. Among them is Shringan, son of Shamika. He is young, very young to hold so much fire. He has grown on roots and discipline, on sacred recitation and fasting, on the fierce, bright knowledge that ascetic power can shake kings. He has the hard edge that sometimes comes to the young when they have learned holiness before they have learned softness. His hair is matted like his father's. His eyes are sharp. His pride is clean and dangerous. He comes carrying forest offerings, dust on his feet, river water drying on his arms. Then he sees his father. The old sage sits as before, still deep in meditation. But around his neck hangs the dead snake. The whole clearing changes. You can feel it. The evening air cools, and yet something flares hot. Birds startle from a branch. One of the other boys gasps. Another begins talking all at once, telling what little he knows, that a king had come, that he had spoken, that the sage had remained silent, that after some time the king had gone away. Shringan's face hardens. He does not see a tired man making a foolish mistake. He sees insult. He sees a king mocking tapas, mocking sacred silence, mocking his father, mocking the old order of the world. He sees the arrogance of power entering the hermitage in jeweled boots and leaving filth behind. And he is young enough to believe wrath is purity if the cause feels righteous. The dusk light catches in the smoke from the altar. The smell of sacrificial ash and crushed grass rises around him. His breathing changes. He takes water in his palm for the force of a vow. His ascetic power, fed by discipline and pride alike, gathers like a storm cloud over dry land. He calls on that power and speaks the curse. He declares that the man who placed a dead snake on the neck of a sage will not escape. On the 7th day from now, Takshaka, king of serpents, will come and bring the king's end. The words leave him bright and terrible, not shouted wildly, spoken with the awful certainty of someone who believes the universe is standing at attention. And once spoken, they cannot be called back by simple regret. The other boys stare. The forest seems to pull in closer. Somewhere in the dimming trees, a night bird calls. Then, at last, Shamika opens his eyes. Meditation releases him gently. He returns not with a start, but like someone rising from deep water. He feels the weight on his neck. His hand touches the dry coils of the snake. He understands enough from one glance at his son's face. A father can read a disaster quickly. He removes the dead serpent and sets it aside. There is no outrage in him, only sorrow. He asks what happened. Shringan tells him, still hot with indignation, still certain he has defended righteousness. He names the offender. He repeats the curse with the fierce satisfaction of justice already delivered. But Shamika's heart sinks. He knows kings. He knows hermitages. He knows how heat and hunger can twist even a disciplined mind. More than that, he knows the difference between offense and ruin. He rebukes his son, not with wild fury, with something worse for the boy, disappointed clarity. He tells Shringan that the king was wrong, yes, small, yes, but not monstrous. The realm is protected by such kings. A moment's insult does not deserve a sentence of death. Ascetic power is not a toy for wounded pride. Fire is sacred. That does not mean you throw it into dry grass whenever someone annoys you. You can almost feel the young boy's anger meeting the old sage's steadiness and finding, for the first time, something it cannot scorch. Shamika speaks of Parikshit as a ruler who has guarded the land, upheld order, held back darkness where he could. He says the curse was too swift, too harsh, born not from calm wisdom, but from heat. He grieves not only for the king, but for his son, who has spent a treasure of spiritual force in anger. The evening deepens. Smoke from the sacred fire rises blue in the gathering dark. Crickets begin their night song. The hermitage, which should have been a place of peace, now feels like the center of a wheel already turning. Shamika cannot undo the spoken curse, so he does the only thing left to do. He sends a disciple to the capital with urgent news. Go quickly, he says. Find the king. Tell him what has been said. Tell him there are 6 days now between him and Takshaka's coming. Let him prepare his soul. And so, the message begins its journey, while the sky turns indigo over the treetops. You can follow that messenger if you like. Sandals strike in the path, breath steady, moonrise silvering the road, village dogs lifting their heads as he passes. He moves through a kingdom still peaceful on its surface. Women draw water. Merchants shut wooden doors. Lamps appear in courtyards, one by one. Somewhere, a flute is being played badly by someone enthusiastic and untalented. Somewhere, someone laughs over supper. No one yet knows that time has narrowed around their king. In Hastinapura, Parikshit has already returned. He has washed. He has eaten little. The hunt sits badly in him. The palace lamps are lit with sesame oil. Their light pools on polished floors and gold-worked pillars. Attendants come and go softly. From distant rooms comes the murmur of evening rituals, the faint ring of metal vessels, the low drone of recited prayer. And through all of it, that one ugly moment remains. He sees again the dead snake on the bow tip, the sage's stillness, his own hand. This is the strange thing. The curse has not yet arrived, but repentance has. It sits with him before the messenger does. When the warning finally enters the palace, it moves like cold wind under a door. The disciple from the hermitage is admitted. He bows. He repeats the sage's sorrow. He recounts the son's anger. He delivers the sentence cleanly. On the 7th day, Takshaka will come. No one in the hall mistakes the name. Takshaka, Serpent King, ancient, fearsome, not the sort of danger a man brushes off with a shrug and a stronger lock. The room stills. You can hear fabric rustle. Someone inhales sharply. A lamp crackles. Outside, in the court beyond, horses stamp in their stalls. Parikshit listens without interruption. He does not protest that the curse is unfair. He does not send soldiers galloping to seize a child. He does not laugh it away. He knows too well what opened this door. Weariness made room. Pride walked in, action followed, and now fate has taken a shape. His face changes, but not with panic, more with recognition. So this is how it comes, he thinks. Not on a battlefield, not under banners, not with conch shells blowing. From a dead snake, from a thirsty afternoon, from himself. There is almost something tender in the sadness of it. Human life, even royal life, can turn on such a shabby hinge. Orders begin, of course. Precautions, watchfulness, serpent-warding herbs, guards, physicians, learned men summoned to advise, palace builders consulted about high chambers and sealed places. Everyone suddenly has ideas, and many of them are terrible. That is one of the less celebrated features of crisis. Half the kingdom becomes an expert in snakes before midnight, but under all that activity runs another current. Parikshit understands that the seventh day is already walking toward him. He sits long that night awake. The moonlight lies pale across carved stone. The smell of lampwick and sandalwood hangs in the room. From outside comes the distant cry of a jackal, then silence again. He thinks of his father Abhimanyu, who barely had time to become a man. He thinks of being born from disaster. He thinks of ruling in an age already slipping downhill. He thinks of Kali, whom he confined but did not erase. He thinks, perhaps, that decline enters not only kingdoms but hearts by the smallest unlocked gate. You are there in that long night with him, hearing the palace breathe around its sleeping people, while the king remains awake with his one irreversible act. By dawn, the story has spread, not in full. Palace stories never travel in full. By breakfast, someone says the king offended a sage. By noon, someone says he struck him. By evening, someone says serpents are already in the walls. Fear is a very imaginative servant, but at the center of it, the truth remains plain and almost embarrassingly small. A thirsty king came to a hermitage. A silent sage did not answer. A dead snake was lifted. A boy spoke in anger. 7 days opened, and all the great weight of destiny, for a while, hangs from that slender thread. The drums of war are long gone. No chariot wheels thunder now. No armies gather on Kurukshetra's field. It is quieter than that, more intimate, more unsettling. A life may survive fire in the womb, inherit a kingdom, confront the darkness of an age, and still be brought to the edge by one mean little gesture under a hot afternoon sun. The seventh day has not yet come, but it is coming, and the river is waiting. 7 dawns wait by the river. Parikshit does not run from them. The curse has landed. The words are out in the world now, sharp as a serpent's fang and impossible to call back. On the 7th day, Takshaka will come. Not maybe. Not if the omens line up. He will come. So the king does something rarer than heroics. He becomes still. He places the kingdom in other hands for a little while. He sets aside royal comforts, royal meals, royal arguments, royal guards bustling around, as if noise itself could defeat fate. Then he goes to the bank of the Ganga, and you go with him. The river is broad that morning, silver where the sun catches it, brown-green where the current deepens. Wet mud cools under bare feet. Kusa grass has been spread carefully for a seat. The wind carries the smell of river water, clay, wild reeds, and the faint sweetness of flowers brought by those who came to pray. Above it all, birds call across the current, quick and bright. Parikshit bows to the sacred stream. This is not the bow of a man performing ceremony, because courtiers expect it. This is the bow of someone who has seen the wall at the edge of his days and decided not to pound on it. He sits facing east. His face is lean with fasting already. The anger of the forest is gone from him. The foolishness of that dead snake, that one bitter act, has fallen away and left a raw clarity behind. He does not excuse himself. He does not stamp his foot and complain that kings are human too, that fatigue makes fools of everyone, that young ascetics should learn a little patience before cursing monarchs. All of that may be true. It does not matter now. He accepts the curse as he accepted the crown. With both hands, with open eyes, word spreads fast, faster than monsoon gossip, faster than palace rumor, faster than a cook carrying scandal from courtyard to courtyard. The king is sitting by the Ganga. He has renounced food. He seeks no physician, no fortress, no hidden chamber lined with charms and snake-repelling herbs. He wants to hear what must be heard before the end comes. So they gather. Sages come first, because sages always appear when the world reaches one of its still points. They arrive from hermitages, from forests, from pilgrim roads powdered with dust. Some come wrapped in bark cloth. Some wear deerskin. Some have matted hair bound high on the head. Some look so old that they seem carved from tree root and smoke. Others are bright-eyed and spare, young only in the strange way holy men can be young, as if time has forgotten to settle on them. Then come brahmanas, mendicants, wandering reciters, students carrying bundles of palm leaves, kings who are suddenly very aware of their own necks, householders, servants, mothers with children on their hips, old men leaning on staffs, boys who should have stayed home but absolutely did not. Because who would? A king is waiting for the seventh day. The Ganga is flowing, and all of India seems to feel that something more than one man's ending is about to happen. You can feel it in the hush along the riverbank. Even the usual sounds are softer. Bells from distant shrines float thinly through the air. Sand shifts under sandals. Prayer beads click. The current keeps moving with that patient, liquid voice rivers have. The sound of time refusing to hurry for anyone. Parikshit rises as each great sage arrives. He honors them one by one. He greets Vyasa's disciples. He greets seers, whose names have crossed generations. He greets men who know the Vedas by heart, and men who know forests better than courts. He folds his hands and asks the question that matters now, the only question large enough to fill his remaining days. What should a man do when the end is near? Not a king, not a warrior, a man. What should he hear, remember, speak, worship, let go of? The question settles over the gathering. It is a better question than any he asked in anger. The sages look at him and see many things at once. A ruler, a grandson of the Pandavas, a child once drawn breathless from destruction, a man who made one ugly mistake, a soul standing where all souls stand eventually, stripped down to the simple truth that no one gets to stay forever. They begin to speak among themselves. Some praise meditation. Some speak of sacrifice. Some urge remembrance of the Supreme. Some speak of detachment. Some of duty fulfilled to the last breath. Some of reciting divine names until the mind loosens its hold on fear. The air hums with their gathered wisdom, but still there is a feeling of waiting, as if the riverbank itself knows the true voice has not yet arrived. The sun climbs higher. Heat gathers on the sand. Cotton robes cling lightly to skin. The scent of sun-warmed reeds rises from the banks. A boy somewhere is shushed by his mother after dropping a brass cup. An old ascetic sneezes, blinks, and resumes looking profound, which is honestly impressive. Then the murmuring changes. Heads turn. Someone is coming down the river path. At first, he hardly seems like a sage at all. No procession, no attendants, no announcing conch. Just a young man walking barefoot through dust and light, naked except for the sky, his body lean as a forest deer, his skin touched by sun, his hair loose and dark. He moves without self-consciousness, without hurry, without even the faintest interest in how astonishing he looks. This is Shuka, Vyasa's son, born wise, they say, so free of the world's grip that he wandered away almost at once, untouched by greed, untouched by lust, untouched by the whole sticky business of being impressed by yourself. Birds are less distracted than this man. Wind has stronger opinions. Village women once looked up from the river and laughed softly as he passed, because he saw them no more than he saw tree bark or cloud. Meanwhile, his father, mighty Vyasa, came hurrying behind, and they covered themselves for the father. That is how detached Shuka is. Vyasa knows everything, but he is still a householder. Shuka belongs to the open road and the unbound sky. He walks into the gathering, and all those old sages rise. All of them. Imagine that. Men who have spent lifetimes in austerity standing up for someone who looks too young to be taken seriously by a palace gatekeeper. Holiness can be very rude to age hierarchies. Parikshit sees him and knows. He bows low. The breeze lifts a strand of kusa grass beside his knee. The Ganga glints. Somewhere upriver, a heron steps through the shallows, slow and delicate, as if trying not to interrupt. Parikshit asks his question again, now to Shuka. What should one hear and do when the final days are counted? Shuka sits, and the 7 days begin. The first day opens like a lamp being lit in a dark room. Shuka does not rush. He lets his words move with the current, steady and clear. He begins at the beginning, where all true tellings begin. Before kings, before curses, before one frightened man's countdown beside a river. He speaks of the supreme, beyond decay, the one from whom worlds emerge as breath emerges from sleep. He speaks of creation unfolding, of time, of elements, of mind, of the great cosmic person whose body is all that exists. Parikshit listens, as if thirst itself has taken human form. That is the strange thing. He has given up water, he has given up food, yet he seems to drink more deeply than any feasting king ever has. Every word enters him, every image settles. The panic that might have rattled him apart begins slowly to loosen. You sit there too, under the growing gold of afternoon, and it feels as if the river has widened. The world itself seems larger than it was yesterday, larger than curses, larger than one body. Shuka tells of sages and manus, of the ordering of ages, of the ways the Lord enters creation without ever being trapped by it. He speaks of the soul as something not broken when the body falls away, just as the sky is not harmed when a clay pot cracks. He speaks of the mind's tricks, of attachment binding like silk cords that feel soft until you try to move. The listeners barely stir. Occasionally, a breeze runs cool off the water and relieves the day's heat. Lamp smoke begins to rise as evening creeps in. The smell of clarified butter and sandalwood drifts over the bank. Stars appear one by one above the dark ribbon of trees. Parikshit does not ask for a cushion. He does not complain that kusa grass is an unforgiving seat after several hours. Kings discover many things during renunciation. One of them is that grass has never cared about your title. Night passes in recitation and stillness. Then dawn comes again. Mist hangs over the Ganga, pale and silver. Water birds cry across the shallows. The hems of robes are damp with dew. The eastern sky blushes softly, and Shuka continues. The second day is full of descents. The Lord comes down again and again, Shuka says, whenever the world tilts too far into chaos. Not always with thunder and flashing weapons, sometimes as a fish in floodwaters, sometimes as a tortoise bearing a mountain's weight, sometimes as a boar lifting the earth, sometimes as a man-lion bursting from a pillar to protect a child who would not stop loving him. Parikshit hears of Prahlada, small and fearless in a court of terror, and his eyes deepen. He hears of devotion that does not bargain, love that does not ask for safer terms first, faith sitting calm even while danger circles. You can almost feel the listeners leaning in. The stories move through the day like garlands being laid one after another. Vimana, the dwarf who asked for 3 steps of land and then covered worlds with his stride. The ocean of milk churned by gods and demons alike. Everyone sweating for immortality and still somehow making everything more complicated before it got better. Ancient kings who ruled, lost, surrendered, woke up. There is a little situational comedy in some of it, the kind sacred stories allow because divine power can afford to smile. Demons making grand plans and being outwitted by someone who arrives looking harmless. Gods in splendid ornaments behaving like anxious cousins at a wedding. Whole cosmic emergencies hinging on whether someone remembered the right hymn. India has always known that holiness and absurdity are neighbors. The listeners smile when the moment allows, then grow still again. By the third day, the riverbank has become its own small world. No one wants to leave. More people have gathered at a distance, careful not to disturb. They stand under peepal and banyan shade. They sit on folded cloths. Some keep silence. Some weep quietly for reasons they could not explain if asked. The kingdom is waiting, yes, but it is also listening. The heat swells by midday. Dust smells warm and dry. River wind strokes sweat-cooled skin. Someone passes incense through the gathering, and the fragrance of resin and tulsi leaves floats low over the kusa grass. Shuka now tells of Kapila, of Dhruva, of sages who turned inward and found a light no sunset could touch. He tells of the discipline of the mind, but he does not make it sound like punishment. He makes it sound like remembering your own home. Parikshit asks questions when he needs to. Not many, just enough. He asks what becomes of one whose mind is restless at the end. He asks what should be remembered above all. He asks how devotion works for those who are not great yogis, not mountain sages, not masters of breath and trance. A practical question. A king's question, really. What about the rest of us? Shuka answers with kindness. He says the divine name itself is a boat. He says hearing the Lord's deeds with a full heart purifies faster than prideful austerities. He says remembrance, sincere and whole, can carry a person across the last dark water. Parikshit lowers his head. For the first time since the curse, you see no struggle in him, no inward flinch, just attention, just surrender ripening. quiet and luminous. The fourth day turns toward kings and wanderers, toward those who tried to hold worlds in their hands and learned that hands tire. Bharata, renouncing. Rishabha, moving beyond all social masks. Stories of rise and fall, pride and release, all laid gently before a man who once wore a crown and now sits barefoot by a river waiting for a serpent. It could be unbearable. It is not. That is the wonder of it, because the stories do not tighten fear, they dissolve it. Shuka speaks the way monsoon rain falls on dust, not harshly, but thoroughly. The old heat of anxiety keeps sinking into the earth. You feel it yourself, the river's murmur, the repetition of holy names, the measured rise and fall of the sage's voice, the brightness of sky fading into evening saffron. Everything in this place says the same thing without saying it aloud. There is a way to meet the end without being torn apart by it. On the fifth day, the current of narration bends toward Krishna. This is the moment many were waiting for, though none interrupted to demand it. The name itself changes the air. Faces lift, old wounds stir and sweeten. Even now, even after his departure from the earth, even after Dwaraka sank and the Yadavas passed, the sound of Krishna's life comes like flute music through a closed room. Shuka tells of his birth in prison darkness, of chains and prophecy, of the midnight crossing over the Yamuna while rain poured and the serpenthood spread above him. He tells of Gokula, of butter thefts and overturned carts, of calves and cowherd boys and mothers forever trying to catch a child who happened to be the Lord of all worlds and therefore, naturally, impossible to manage. A little laughter moves through the gathering then, soft, relieved, because yes, the Supreme can sustain galaxies, and yes, he can also steal yogurt and look innocent about it. That detail comforts people more than philosophy sometimes. You can smell fresh butter in your mind as the stories unfold, hear bangles clinking in village courtyards, hear cowbells and flute notes over evening pasture. Dust rises golden around small bare feet. The forests of Vrindavana bloom again in words alone. Krishna dances on Kaliya's hoods. He lifts Govardhana like a child picking up a toy. He multiplies joy under the moon among the gopis, whose love has no calculation in it, no bargaining, no concern for prestige. Parikshit listens with tears standing quietly in his eyes. He never knew Krishna the way his grandfathers did. He inherited Krishna as memory, as blessing, as absence so immense it shaped a generation. Yet now, by the river, he meets him in living sound, not as strategist, not as prince, not as the grey voice between armies, as beloved, as playful lord, as the heart's refuge. The fifth day slips into the sixth almost without a seam. The stories continue through Mathura and Dwaraka, through tyrants brought down and devotees protected, through queens, sages, warriors, and simple hearts transformed by nearness to the divine. Shuka does not hide complexity. He does not flatten the world into easy comfort. Kingdoms rise and fall, bodies age, friends part, even avatars depart when their work is done. But through all of it runs bhakti, devotion, like a thread of gold, through dark cloth, not fear, not ritual for show. Love, remembrance, surrender. By now Parikshit has become less a king listening and more listening itself. His hunger has gone somewhere beyond complaint. His body is there, yes, thinner now, still and upright on the grass, but his attention has turned so bright that it almost seems to give light. When the river wine moves his hair, he does not notice. when the sun tilts west and shadows lengthen around the assembled sages, he does not notice. He is inside the current of the words, being carried. You are close enough to hear the river licking softly at the bank, close enough to smell damp earth cooling after heat, close enough to feel how strange and gentle this is, an entire kingdom held together for one suspended week by a man choosing to listen well. On the sixth day, Shuka speaks more directly of the final passage. He tells of the soul leaving one dwelling and taking another, unless it has learned the way beyond return. He tells of fixing the mind on the divine form, on the lotus feet, on the face full of compassion. He tells of letting go, not with bitterness, but with recognition. The body was always borrowed. The kingdom was always temporary. The loved ones were gifts, never possessions. Parikshit hears all this as someone hears the last instructions before a long journey. No panic now, just care. He asks about fear itself, how it shrinks, how it ends. Shuka tells him fear comes from thinking we are separate, cut off, small and perishable in the worst sense. Devotion dissolves that loneliness. To remember the Lord fully is to discover that what is deepest in you was never abandoned. The day grows very quiet after that. Even the children on the outer edges of the gathering seem subdued. The Ganga moves on, broad and gleaming. White cranes lift suddenly from a sandbar and wheel into the sky. The sun lowers red through river haze. Then the seventh dawn comes. No one needs to announce it. Everyone has been counting without counting. The light arrives thin and pure over the water. A coolness lingers before heat. Garlands laid in offering the previous evening are slightly faded now, petals curling inward. Smoke from the morning lamps threads upward in blue lines. The air tastes of clay, tulsi, and the metallic freshness that always seems to live near great rivers before sunrise. Parikshit bows once more to Shuka. He is ready. That is not the same as eager, not the same as unfeeling. Ready means the struggle against what must be has ended. Ready means the heart has chosen where to rest. Shuka gives him the final teachings. He gathers all the river of speech into one clear current. Remember the Lord. Let the mind dwell there. Let the names be your shelter. Let fear fall away. Let the end be an offering, not a theft. Parikshit closes his eyes for a time. When he opens them, they are calm. The sages watch. The people watch from a reverent distance. No one rushes forward with last-minute schemes. No one says perhaps the curse will forget the address. No one tries to hide a king from destiny in a wicker basket somewhere. Enough has been understood by now that such scrambling would feel almost embarrassing. Imagine trying to outwit time with better furniture. Parikshit sits straight upon the kusa grass and turns inward. The river keeps speaking in its endless syllables. Shuka rises when his work is done. He does not linger to gather praise. He came like wind through trees, and he leaves with that same untethered simplicity. Some say he walked away at once. Some say he vanished into the brightness of the morning. On a riverbank charged with holiness, both versions feel possible. What remains is the listening. That is the true marvel of these 7 days. A cursed week became a doorway. A king waiting for a serpent became the vessel for sacred remembrance. Generations will sit where you sit now, in halls, in temples, under village eaves in the rainy season, beside brass lamps at night, and hear these same divine tales because one man did not spend his last days building walls. He sat by the Ganga and opened himself instead. The sun climbs, the seventh day ripens. The river wind moves through the reeds with a soft, dry whisper. Cloth flutters. Prayer beads rest in old hands. The world seems briefly balanced between breath and no breath, sound and silence, ending and release. And on the bank of the Ganga, with kusa grass beneath him and the stories of the Lord filling every chamber of his heart, Parikshit waits without fear. Evening comes, the river keeps moving. Parikshit sits exactly where he has sat, his face turned inward and upward at once, as if listening to something just beyond sound. Around him, the sages remain in quiet circles. Copper light settles over the water. Smoke from little offerings drifts sweet and thin through the air. You can smell wet river mud, sandalwood ash, and the faint dryness of sun-warmed reeds. They have guarded him carefully. Of course they have. Paths have been watched, food examined, strange visitors turned away. Men with weapons stand near enough to feel useful and far enough to respect the holy ground. But curses are never impressed by security. Takshaka does not arrive with drums. He comes hidden inside the ordinary path of the world. A group of ascetics approaches with fruits and kusa grass and the harmless look of travelers nearing a holy bank at dusk. Their feet are dusty. Their garments are simple. In their offering is one fruit, small and unremarkable, the kind a servant might pass along without a thought. That is how fate likes to enter, through the side gate, wrapped in routine. Parikshit accepts what comes. He has spent 7 days drinking sacred speech. He is not the same man who once rode hot and thirsty into a silent hermitage. The king who waited for an answer from the world has become the listener who no longer demands one. So, when the fruit is opened, and from within it slips a tiny creature, copper bright and quick as a thought, no panic rises in him. You are right there in the hush before it happens. No one breathes. Even the river seems to lean closer. The small serpent is only a disguise. In the next instant, Takshaka shows himself in his true force, swift, radiant, terrible as a storm, hidden in a jewel box. He strikes, a flash, a burst of consuming fire. Not wild, not sprawling, but sudden and complete, like dry incense catching at a lamp's edge. And Parikshit's mortal frame is left behind. That is all. No struggle worth naming. No long night of fear. The curse finds him. The king meets it awake. The air changes after. You can feel it. The gathered sages do not scatter. Some close their eyes. Some lift their hands in blessing. The Ganga keeps speaking against her banks, patient as ever. Above the river, the last light thins into violet. Far away, in the halls of Hastinapura, grief rises again. Janamejaya, his son, receives the news like a door slammed shut in winter. He has not only lost a father, he has lost the last living bridge to the hands that rebuilt the kingdom after the Great War. Sorrow hardens quickly in young kings. In time, his mourning will turn toward vengeance. Fire altars will be raised, priests will chant, serpents will be summoned from sky and forest toward a vast sacrifice meant to empty the world of snakes. That comes in time. For now, stay here by the river, because this is what remains when the flames are gone. Not a throne, not armor, not the anxious work of keeping one body safe for 7 doomed days. What remains is the listening. The king, born still and silent in Uttara's chamber, has spent his final week hearing of the divine until fear itself loosens its grip. His line continues. His son will rule. The Kuru name will move forward like a lamp passed carefully from hand to hand. But another inheritance will last longer, by riverbanks, in forest hermitages, in palace halls after rain. By lamplight, when the oil burns low and the night grows wide, people will remember the king who sat down before the end and listened without turning away. And so Parikshit remains there, on the edge of the Ganga, evening on his shoulders, sacred words in the air, meeting the final moment with open eyes. The river is still there after the teaching's end, and the last light has not quite left the water. The wind moves over the Ganga as if nothing urgent has happened at all. The reeds bend, the sky softens. A king has listened for 7 days, with the end already walking toward him, and somehow that is where this whole life comes clear. So after all of that, what does this life leave with us? First, this life begins in ruin. Parikshit does not arrive in a season of celebration. He is born after the Great War has emptied palaces and broken mothers. He comes into a world where the old songs are still mixed with smoke. His first gift is not comfort, it is survival, and that matters, because his life begins with a truth the story never hides. You do not get to choose the world you are born into. Some are born into abundance, some into exile, some into peace, some, like Parikshit, into the long shadow of everyone else's grief. That is karma at the level of the world. Not punishment, not a simple reward system. A web already in motion before you open your eyes. Parikshit inherits that web. He carries the hopes of dead men he never met. He is loved fiercely, but some of that love is trembling. The elders look at him and see Abhimanyu. They see the future. They see the only branch left on a nearly stripped tree. Imagine that weight. You are just a child, and half the kingdom watches you breathe like it is a sacred duty. That part of his life teaches something tender and difficult. We are never only ourselves. We carry family longing, unfinished sorrow, blessings, mistakes, expectations. The Mahabharata never pretends otherwise. It knows that inheritance is not only land and jewels, it is memory, it is wound, it is duty. That is where Dharma enters. Dharma is often called duty, but it is more alive than that. It is the right shape of your life, the way you stand in the world when many things are pulling you out of balance. For Parikshit, Dharma was not the shining heroism of Kurukshetra. He did not get a battlefield revelation with conch shells and chariots. Poor man got paperwork, border disputes, moral decay, and the creeping headache of ruling in hard times. That is a king's dharma too, and maybe a more familiar one. When he meets Kali, he does something wise. He does not imagine he can scrub darkness out of the age completely. He restrains it. He confines it. He gives it narrow places to live. That is such a human teaching. You cannot always erase disorder from the world. You cannot remove greed, deceit, craving, or cruelty from human life by sheer force. If only every king would sleep better, every family too. What you can do is recognize it clearly, name where it enters, refuse to let it rule the whole house. That is dharma in a fading age, not perfection, stewardship. And then comes the mistake. This is one of the most important turns in his life, because it is so small at first. He is thirsty, tired, irritated. A sage does not answer, and a king who has carried himself well for years does one mean petty thing, not a grand fall, not some thunderous wickedness, just one sour moment. The point comes through very clearly here. A life can be noble and still vulnerable. Wisdom does not make someone impossible to crack. Fatigue matters, anger matters, pride matters. The little moments matter. That is karma too. not as some distant cosmic thunderbolt, but as consequence ripening from one act into the next. An insult becomes a curse becomes a final week. The wheel turns quickly, but even there, the deepest meaning of Parikshit's life has not appeared yet. Because his greatness is not that he never failed. His greatness is what he does after failure. He does not deny what happened. He does not roar about royal privilege. He does not gather armies to fight a curse or waste his last days inventing excuses. He recognizes the truth. He accepts the weight of his act. He steps away from the throne. He goes to the river. That movement matters more than conquest. This is where the story opens into something luminous. The final test is not whether he can survive. It is whether he can awaken. And that is where bhakti enters. Bhakti is devotion, yes, but not in the thin sense of merely praising the divine with folded hands. It is loving attention. It is turning your whole being toward what is eternal. It is the heart choosing where to rest. Parikshit spends his last 7 days listening. Think about that. A king, cursed, with death approaching, chooses not frenzy but listening, not distraction, not denial. Listening. He drinks sacred narration the way a thirsty man drinks cool water. He lets the names and forms of the divine fill the space where fear would normally live. He listens to creation, to avatars, to Krishna's play, to the soul's journey beyond the body. And little by little, the panic that would seize most people loosens its grip. You can almost feel the night air there by the river, the scent of kusa grass, the low murmur of gathered sages, the current moving steadily beside him while he learns how to let go. This is what Maya means here too. Maya is the great enchantment that makes the passing world feel like the only world. The crown feels permanent. The body feels permanent. The insult feels permanent. The fear feels permanent. But by the Ganga, Parikshit begins to see through that veil. The kingdom will continue without him. The body will fall when it must. The curse is real, but it is not the deepest reality. Beneath the movement of gain and loss, there is something untouched. The self, the divine ground, the presence that does not burn when the age burns. That is why the final week becomes so peaceful. Not because danger disappears, because perspective changes. And that is the resolution of his life. He was born from destruction, ruled in decline, stumbled through anger, and still reached clarity. No age is too dark for devotion. No inherited grief is too heavy for dharma. No mistake has to be the last word if repentance is true. And that matters because Parikshit's life is not built like a simple moral tale. He is not spotless. He is not ruined beyond repair. He is human in the most recognizable way. He carries blessing and burden together. He does what is right for years. Then, in one overheated moment, he fails. After that, he does the rarest thing. He turns fully toward truth. That is why the river matters so much. The Ganga is not only a setting for the ending. It becomes a place of reordering. At the palace, he is a king surrounded by duties, rank, memory, fear, and protection. At the river, he is only a soul facing time honestly. The court falls away. The noise falls away. What remains is attention, and attention is sacred in this tradition. What you listen to shapes the final movement of the mind. What fills the heart in the last days matters. So he fills his last days not with schemes, not with revenge, not with bitterness, but with the names and deeds of the divine. He chooses remembrance over resistance. There is deep comfort in that. The story does not promise that sincere people avoid suffering. It does not promise that kings can command mortality. It does not even promise that repentance cancels every consequence. What it offers is something steadier. It says consequence is real, but so is transformation. Fear is real, but so is release. Death is real, but it is not the whole truth about a life. That is why Parikshit's ending does not feel like defeat. The body falls, the curse is fulfilled. But inwardly, something has already opened beyond panic. He meets the last moment, prepared in the only way that finally matters. His mind has been turned toward what does not perish. So, when you hold the whole life together, the meaning becomes gentle and clear. Dharma is how you stand in a damaged world. Karma is the chain of action and consequence that no one entirely escapes. Maya is the spell that makes passing things feel absolute. Bhakti is what carries the heart through all three. And in Parikshit, all of them meet. A child rescued from death learns to govern after catastrophe. A king facing decline learns that evil is managed more often than erased. A tired man learns how much harm one careless act can do. And a soul under sentence learns to listen so deeply that even the fear of death loosens and falls away. That is closure. Not the closure of everything becoming easy, but the closure of understanding what the journey was for. You may not control the age you live in. You may not undo every curse already set in motion. You may not erase Kali from the roads of the world, but you can choose attention over distraction, humility over ego, repentance over denial, devotion over fear. That is not a small thing. In this tradition, that is everything. Parikshit's last victory is inward. He turns a doomed week into a doorway. He transforms ending into offering. He becomes, in the most beautiful way, not the king who conquered, but the king who listened. And that is why his name remains warm, long after the throne has gone cold. By the end, the child born silent has given the world a sacred sound to live by. The baby who did not breathe becomes the man who spends his final days breathing in the divine. The last heir of a broken house finds peace not in power, but in surrender rightly understood. So the river keeps moving. The sky darkens gently, and on its bank sits the quiet truth of it all, that a human life does not need to be flawless to become holy. It needs honesty. It needs turning. It needs the courage to listen when the last light is fading. The river keeps its low, endless murmur. Evening settles over the reeds, soft and blue at the edges. The last smoke of the offerings thins into the darkening air. Somewhere along the bank, a lamp flame trembles, steadies, and burns on. Hastinapura is far away now. The crown, the court, the old grief, the repaired kingdom, the guarded roads, the gold-lit halls where Parikshit first learned the weight of survival. All of it has passed into memory. The boy born silent has become a name, carried gently through time. The king who could not stop the serpent has become the listener who taught the world how to meet the end without turning away. The Ganga moves on, over stones, past roots, past flowers loosened from worshipping hands. The night deepens, the stars appear one by one above the quiet water, the reeds whisper, the lamps flicker, and somewhere beyond grief, beyond crowns, beyond fire, something still continues, not loudly, not urgently, just steadily, like a river in the dark,